The custody papers hit Ethan Cross's kitchen table like a death sentence. His hands trembled as he read the words, unfit parent, unstable income, unsuitable environment, typed in cold legalese by his dead wife's parents. 7 years of bedtime stories, packed lunches, and working himself to exhaustion meant nothing compared to their granite countertops and country club memberships. In 3 weeks, a mediator would decide if loving his daughter was enough or if being poor made him disposable. But before we get there, you need to understand how a man becomes invisible in his own life and what it takes to be seen again. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below and hit that like button. I want to see how far Ethan's story travels. Now let's go back to where it started. An Easter Sunday that should have been about family, but became the day Ethan realized he'd already lost the battle he didn't know he was fighting. The ham was too dry. Ethan Cross noticed it the moment Diane Hale set the platter on the table, the meat glistening under the chandelier light, edges crisp and dark where they'd cooked too long. She'd always been a careful cook, meticulous about presentation, the kind of woman who arranged parsley like it mattered. But today the ham looked punishing, deliberate in its overcooked edges, as if even the food was making a point. "Ethan, would you mind carving?" Diane's voice floated across the dining room, pleasant and hollow. He stood, wiping his palms on his slacks, the same pair he'd worn to Mia's funeral 18 months ago. They were looser now. Everything was looser. He crossed to the sideboard where the carving knife waited, its blade catching the April sunlight streaming through the bay windows of the Hale family home. Behind him, Lily's voice rose in a bright peal of laughter. His daughter sat between her grandmother and her Aunt Claire, coloring a placemat with crayons someone had thoughtfully provided. 7 years old and still young enough to find joy in a dining room that felt like a mausoleum to Ethan, all polished wood and careful silence. "Like this, Lilybug?" Claire leaned over, adding details to a rabbit Lily had sketched. "See? Just little lines for the whiskers." "That's perfect," Lily beamed, and the sound cracked something in Ethan's chest. He began carving, focusing on making even slices, not too thick. Presentation mattered here. Everything mattered here. In this house where he'd first met Mia's parents 12 years ago, back when he'd had a different job and a different life, and hadn't yet learned what it meant to be measured and found wanting. "So Ethan," Martin Hale's voice came from the head of the table, measured and precise. He was a tall man, silver-haired, with the kind of posture that came from decades of expecting deference. "Still at Meridian Tower?" "Yes, sir." Ethan kept his eyes on the ham. "Coming up on 14 months. "Night shift still?" "Yes, sir." A pause. Ethan could feel the weight of it, the unspoken judgment hanging in the air like humidity before a storm. "That must be difficult," Diane said, her tone suggesting it was something other than sympathetic. "With Lily's school schedule." "We manage." Ethan transferred a slice of ham to the serving platter. "Mrs. Chen next door helps out. Lily stays with her until I get home in the morning, then I get her to school." "Mrs. Chen." Diane repeated the name like she was tasting something unfamiliar. "Is she the one with the cats?" "She has 2 cats. Yes, ma'am." "I see." Ethan knew what she saw. He could read it in the tightness around her mouth, the way her fingers drummed once against the tablecloth. She saw a 7-year-old girl being shuffled between an elderly neighbor and a father who slept through the daylight hours, living in a neighborhood that wasn't dangerous exactly, but wasn't Oakmont Heights either. "Daddy's really good at fixing things," Lily announced suddenly, her voice cutting through the tension with the oblivious confidence of childhood. "He fixed our toilet last week and Mrs. Chen's refrigerator and the light in the hallway that always flickered." "Did he now?" Martin's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Uh-huh. He can fix anything." Lily returned to her coloring, unaware of the way her grandfather's expression had shifted into something that might have been pity or might have been contempt. Sometimes the two looked identical. Ethan finished carving and returned to his seat, the one at the far end of the table, opposite Martin, close enough to be present but distant enough to remember his place. The symbolism wasn't subtle. Dinner proceeded in that careful way that family meals do when everyone is performing civility rather than feeling it. Diane asked Lily about school. Claire talked about her upcoming wedding, throwing occasional glances at Ethan as if checking whether he'd react to hearing about celebration and joy. Martin discussed his golf game with no one in particular, and Ethan ate his dry ham and tried not to notice the way conversation flowed around him like water around a stone, present but irrelevant. More wine, Ethan. Diane lifted the bottle, her hand steady. No, thank you, ma'am. I'm driving. Of course. How responsible. The words should have been praise. They weren't. Lily chattered about her upcoming dance recital, her words tumbling over each other in excitement. She'd be a butterfly, she explained, with wings Mrs. Chen had helped her make from coat hangers and pantyhose. Diane's smile grew thinner with each detail, as if the image of her granddaughter in homemade costume wings was somehow offensive. We'd be happy to help with the costume, Diane said when Lily paused for breath. I'm sure we could find something more professional. That's kind of you, Ethan said carefully, but Lily's really proud of what she made. I'm sure, but still. A dance recital is an important moment. First impressions matter. The wings are beautiful, Ethan said, and meant it. They were lopsided and fragile and covered in glitter that still showed up in his truck 3 days later, and they were beautiful because Lily had made them with her small hands and enormous heart. If you say so. Diane turned to Lily. Sweetheart, would you like to see the guest room? We've redecorated since you were last here. Lily looked to Ethan first, a habit he'd carefully cultivated, making sure she knew to check with him before wandering off in other people's homes. He nodded, and she scrambled down from her chair, following her grandmother up the curved staircase. The moment they disappeared, the atmosphere in the dining room shifted. Claire suddenly became very interested in her phone. Martin set down his fork with deliberate precision. Ethan. His name came out flat. We need to talk. All right. This arrangement isn't working. Ethan's pulse kicked up, but he kept his voice level. What arrangement? You know what I mean? Your situation, the night shifts, the apartment, shuffling Lily between neighbors. Martin leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. It's not sustainable. We're doing fine. Are you? Martin's eyebrows rose. You look exhausted. You've lost weight. You're working a janitor's wage when you used to run your own HVAC business. And Lily is happy. Ethan's voice came out harder than he intended. She's healthy, she's doing well in school, she's living in a 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood where sirens wake her up at night. Diane's voice drifted down from the top of the stairs. She'd finished the room tour quickly. Sharing space with a father who's too tired to properly parent. Ethan stood, his chair scraping against hardwood. I parent just fine. No one's questioning your love for her, Martin said, and the condescension in his tone made Ethan's jaw clench. But love isn't enough. Children need stability, resources, a future. She has a future. In that apartment, with your income? Diane descended the stairs, her heels clicking precisely. Mia wanted better for her daughter. The mention of his wife hit like a fist. Ethan's hands curled at his sides, nails biting into palms. Don't. His voice came out low. Don't use Mia's name to justify this. Justify what? Diane's expression remained pleasant, but her eyes were steel. We're simply concerned. Lily deserves the same opportunities Mia had. Private school, music lessons, a home in a safe neighborhood. She has a home. She has an apartment where you sleep during the day while she's at school, where you're gone all night while she stays with strangers, where Mrs. Chen isn't a stranger. She's been our neighbor for 3 years. She's not family. Martin stood as well, and suddenly the dining room felt very small. We are. We can provide for Lily in ways you simply can't. Not anymore. Not after... He trailed off, but the implication hung there. Not after you lost everything. Not after you couldn't save Mia. Not after you proved you weren't enough. After what? Ethan's voice was quiet, dangerous. Say it. After the medical bills bankrupted you, Martin said bluntly. After you lost the business, the house, everything. You did your best, Ethan. No one faults you for that. But your best wasn't enough to save your wife, and it's not enough to give Lily the life she deserves. The words landed like stones. Ethan stood there, chest tight, vision narrowing to pinpoints. Upstairs he could hear Lily's footsteps, her voice asking Claire something about the flowers in a vase. I think, Ethan said slowly, carefully, that it's time for us to go. Don't be dramatic, Diane said. We're just having a conversation. No, you're telling me I'm not good enough for my own daughter. That's not a conversation. We're telling you we can help. Martin's tone shifted, becoming almost gentle. Think about it, Ethan. Really think. What if something happens to you? What if you get sick or hurt on the job? What happens to Lily then? That's not, what if she needs braces, college? What if there's an emergency and you can't afford, I'll figure it out, like I always do. You shouldn't have to just figure it out. Diane moved closer, and Ethan caught the scent of her perfume, expensive and cloying. Let us help. Let Lily stay with us during the week. You can see her on weekends. She'd have her own room, a yard to play in. No. You're being selfish. The accusation hit harder than Ethan expected. He stared at Diane, at this woman who'd raised the love of his life, who'd smiled at their wedding and held Lily in the hospital and sobbed at Mia's funeral with a grief that had seemed to age her a decade in a day. I'm her father, he said quietly. Being a father is more than biology, Martin said. It's about providing, protecting. Can you honestly say you're doing that? Ethan wanted to scream. He wanted to list every sacrifice. Every night he'd worked until his hands bled. Every time he'd skipped meals so Lily could have new shoes or school supplies or a birthday present that made her smile. He wanted to explain that protection wasn't about money or zip codes. That providing meant showing up every single day even when exhaustion made his bones feel like glass. But he could see in their faces that none of it would matter. They'd already decided. In their eyes, he was a janitor, a failure, a man who'd proven his inadequacy by losing everything that mattered. Well, almost everything. Lily? He called up the stairs. Time to go, honey. Already? Her disappointed face appeared at the top of the staircase. But Claire was going to show me her wedding dress. We'll see it another time. Say goodbye. Lily descended slowly, sensing the tension even if she didn't understand it. She hugged Diane, then Martin, then Claire. Each embrace lasted a beat too long, as if the Hales were memorizing the feeling. Ethan took Lily's hand and led her to the front door. Behind them, Diane's voice rang out, artificially bright. We'll see you soon, sweetheart, very soon. It sounded like a promise. It felt like a threat. The drive home took 40 minutes, cutting through neighborhoods that grew progressively less manicured as they went. Lily chattered about the redecorated guest room, about the dress Claire was going to wear, about the ham that had been kind of weird tasting, Daddy, but I didn't want to be rude. Ethan made appropriate sounds, his hands tight on the wheel, Martin's words echoing in his skull. What if something happens to you? What if she needs something you can't provide? What if they were right? Their apartment building came into view, a 3-story brick structure built in the 70s, functional but tired, with iron railings that needed paint and a parking lot that needed resurfacing. Home. Ethan had never felt defensive about it before, but now he saw it through the Hales' eyes, cramped, insufficient, a monument to everything he'd lost. Mrs. Chen was watering plants on her balcony when they pulled in. She waved, and Lily waved back enthusiastically. Can I give her the cookies Grandma sent? Lily asked, holding up a tin that Diane had pressed into her hands on the way out. Sure, Bug. I'll be up in a minute. Lily scrambled out, all 7-year-old energy and resilience, and Ethan watched her disappear into the building. Then he sat in his truck, forehead against the steering wheel, and let himself feel it. The fear. The exhaustion. The creeping certainty that maybe the Hales had a point. He'd been so focused on survival, on keeping Lily fed and clothed and loved, that he hadn't stopped to ask if survival was enough. If the life he was providing was the life Mia would have wanted for their daughter. Mia. God, he missed her. Missed her steady presence, her laugh, the way she'd made everything feel manageable just by being there. Breast cancer had taken her in 18 months, faster than any of them had prepared for, and the medical bills had come in waves that drowned him. First, the business, sold to pay for experimental treatments insurance wouldn't cover. Then the house, the savings, the retirement fund he'd started when Lily was born. All of it gone. And Mia, too. He'd thought hitting rock bottom meant there was nowhere to go but up. He hadn't counted on how heavy rock bottom could feel, how it could press down on your shoulders until standing upright became an act of defiance. A knock on the truck window made him jerk upright. Mrs. Chen stood there, concern creasing her weathered face. Ethan rolled down the window. You okay, Ethan? Yeah, just long day. She studied him with eyes that had seen 73 years of long days. Lily said the grandparents were difficult again. She said that? Not in those words, but I know that look on a child's face, confusion, worry they're trying not to show. Mrs. Chen patted his arm. You're a good father. Don't let anyone tell you different. What if good isn't good enough? The question slipped out before Ethan could stop it. Mrs. Chen was quiet for a moment, her hand still on his arm. Good is all any of us have, she said finally. The rest is just noise. She headed back inside, leaving Ethan alone with the April dusk settling over the parking lot. Somewhere above, Lily was probably eating cookies and telling Mrs. Chen about the butterfly wings, her voice bright with uncomplicated joy. Ethan climbed out of the truck and headed upstairs. Their apartment was on the second floor, at the end of the hall where the carpet was slightly less worn. He unlocked the door and stepped into the small living room that doubled as his bedroom, the couch still pulled out from this morning's brief sleep. Lily's backpack sat by the door, her shoes kicked off beside it. Her laughter drifted from Mrs. Chen's apartment next door, audible through walls that were too thin to be anything but honest about their age. Ethan collapsed onto the couch and pulled out his phone. He had 3 hours before his shift started at Meridian Tower. 3 hours to sleep and eat and pretend he wasn't terrified of losing the only thing that mattered. Instead, he found himself opening his photo gallery, scrolling to a picture from 2 years ago. Lily at 5, gap-toothed and grinning, perched on Mia's lap in the backyard of the house they'd lost. Mia looked tired already, the cancer stealing her vitality in increments, but she was smiling. And Lily was radiant, completely unaware that her world was about to fracture. I'm doing my best, Ethan whispered to the woman in the photo. I swear I am. The photo didn't answer. It never did. He set the phone aside and closed his eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Martin's voice kept circling back, each word a barb. Your best wasn't enough to save your wife. True. Painfully, undeniably true. And if his best hadn't been enough then, why would it be enough now? Meridian Tower rose 43 stories above the downtown core, all glass and steel and architectural ambition. Ethan arrived at 10 p.m., parking in the employee lot around back where the building showed its honest face, loading docks and dumpsters, and the mechanical hum of systems working overtime to maintain the illusion of effortless perfection. Evening, Ethan. Marcus, the weekend security guard, buzzed him through. Quiet night so far? They're all quiet until they're not. Marcus chuckled. Truth. Coffee's fresh if you want some. Ethan grabbed a cup from the security desk and headed to the maintenance closet that served as his base of operations. Inside, industrial cleaning supplies lined metal shelves, and his cart waited with its mops and trash bags and bottles of solutions that could strip a floor or a man's hands with equal efficiency. He changed into his work uniform, dark blue pants, light blue shirt with Meridian Janitorial Services embroidered over the pocket. The fabric was rough from too many washes, but it was clean. That mattered. Small dignities mattered when you'd lost the big ones. The night stretched ahead, familiar in its routine. Floors 15 through 25 were his responsibility, executive offices mostly, law firms and consultants and financial advisors who left behind expensive trash and the particular kind of mess that came from people who'd never had to clean up after themselves. Ethan started on 15, working methodically. Empty trash cans, vacuum carpets, wipe down surfaces, check the bathrooms. The building was mostly empty at this hour, just the occasional late-working lawyer or consultant who'd glance up as he passed, seeing the uniform but not the man wearing it. That was fine. Being invisible had advantages. No one bothered him. No one asked questions. He could work in the quiet of his own thoughts, alone with the whisper of the vacuum and the squeak of wheels on linoleum. By 1 a.m., he'd reached floor 22, moving through a maze of cubicles toward the executive wing. This floor housed some of Meridian's most powerful tenants, the kind of people who had corner offices and titles that required multiple business cards to fully explain. He was emptying a trash can outside a conference room when voices drifted from behind a partially closed door down the hall. Ethan hesitated, listening. Late-night meetings weren't unusual, but something about the tone caught his attention. Sharp, agitated. Telling you the ventilation system is inadequate for, and I'm telling you we're not gutting the mechanical room in the middle of a fiscal quarter. Ethan kept moving, pushing his cart past the door. Not his business. He'd learned that lesson early. Keep your head down, do your job, collect your paycheck. Curiosity was a luxury for people who had other options. But as he worked his way through the floor, the conversation kept pulling at him. Something about ventilation systems, mechanical rooms, words that belonged to his old life, when he'd been Ethan Cross of Cross HVAC Solutions, the guy contractors called when they needed systems designed right the first time. That felt like another lifetime, another person entirely. By 3 a.m., Ethan had finished floor 22 and moved on to 23. The building had settled into its deepest quiet, the kind of silence that felt almost sacred, just him and the hum of climate control systems and the occasional groan of pipes adjusting to temperature changes. He was cleaning a bathroom when the lights flickered. Ethan paused, mop in hand, watching the fluorescent stutter. Once, twice, then steady again. Electrical hiccup, probably. Old buildings did that sometimes, especially during spring when temperature swings stressed the systems. Nothing to worry about. The lights flickered again. This time they stayed dim for 3 full seconds before surging back. Ethan set down the mop and stepped into the hallway. Other floors were dark, normal for this hour, but he could see the emergency exit signs glowing their steady green. Backup power was functioning. That was good. He pulled out his phone and texted Marcus. "Lights acting weird up here. You seen anything?" The reply came back immediately. "Negative. Everything looks normal from here. Probably just a breaker issue. Want me to call maintenance?" Ethan hesitated. The night maintenance supervisor was a guy named Derek who treated after-hours calls like personal insults. And truthfully, if the emergency systems were working, it could probably wait until morning. "Nah," Ethan texted back. "I'll keep an eye on it." He returned to cleaning, but part of his attention stayed on the lights. They flickered twice more over the next hour, each time lasting a bit longer. The pattern bothered him. Electrical issues should be random, but this felt rhythmic, systematic. By 4:30 a.m., Ethan had finished his rounds and was back on floor 22, preparing to clock out. That's when he heard it, a muffled bang from somewhere above, followed by a low, sustained hum that vibrated through the floor. The lights went out. Not flickering this time, just gone. The entire floor plunged into darkness, emergency exit signs providing the only illumination. Ethan's phone buzzed. "Marcus. Lost power on multiple floors, emergency systems active. Derek's not answering. Can you check the mechanical room on 25? Ethan stared at the text. The mechanical room. He hadn't been inside one of those in 18 months, hadn't touched HVAC equipment since he'd sold his business. That knowledge felt rusty, probably outdated, definitely not his job anymore. But Derek wasn't answering, and someone needed to check, and old instincts died hard. "On my way," he texted. The stairwell was dark except for emergency lighting, casting everything in greenish shadow. Ethan climbed to the 25th floor, his footsteps echoing off concrete. The mechanical room was at the end of a service hallway, behind a door marked Authorized Personnel Only. Ethan had a master key. Janitors needed access everywhere. He unlocked the door and stepped into controlled chaos. The mechanical room was larger than his apartment, filled with systems that regulated temperature, air quality, and electrical distribution for the entire tower. Normally it hummed with coordinated efficiency. Tonight it rattled and clanged, machinery struggling against some unseen resistance. And standing in the middle of it all, illuminated by the glow of her phone's flashlight, was a woman in a business suit trying to flip breakers at random. "Stop!" Ethan's voice cut through the noise. The woman spun, her flashlight beam hitting him square in the face. He held up a hand against the glare. "Who are you?" Her voice was sharp, authoritative, completely unaccustomed to being questioned. "Janitorial staff. Who are you?" "Sloan Voss. I'm the CEO of Voss Industries. We occupy floors 20 through 25. She turned back to the breaker panel. "The power went out during a conference call with Tokyo. I need it back on." "Yeah, flipping random breakers isn't going to help. Do you have a better idea?" She didn't look at him, her fingers already reaching for another switch. Actually, yes, step away from the panel. Now she looked at him. Even in the dim emergency lighting, Ethan could see the sharp lines of her face, the expensive cut of her suit, the expression that suggested she wasn't used to being told what to do by men in janitor uniforms. Excuse me? Step away from the panel, Ethan repeated, moving closer, before you trip something that takes out the emergency systems too. I know what I'm doing. Do you? Ethan gestured at the panel. Because you've got your hand on the breaker for the fire suppression system. Flip that, and we'll have sprinklers going off across 5 floors. Sloane's hand froze. She looked at the label she'd been ignoring, then back at Ethan. Something shifted in her expression. Not quite respect, but maybe the beginning of it. Fine. She stepped back. What's your diagnosis then? Ethan moved to the main electrical panel, scanning the breakers. Half were tripped, but not in a pattern that made sense for a simple overload. His eyes tracked the system, following the logic he'd learned over 15 years of HVAC work. Give me your flashlight. Sloane handed it over without argument. Ethan directed the beam toward the ceiling, where the main power conduits ran. There, a junction box with scorch marks around the seal. When did the flickering start? He asked. About an hour ago. Why? Because you've got a failing connection in that junction box. It's been arcing, building heat, probably degrading the insulation. Eventually it tripped the breakers as a safety measure. Ethan lowered the flashlight. Flipping them back on without fixing the connection would just start the whole cycle again. Could potentially start a fire. Sloane stared at him. You're a janitor. I'm a janitor who used to run an HVAC company. Ethan handed back her phone. The connection needs to be replaced. Properly. By someone who knows what they're doing. Can you do it? The question hung between them. Ethan looked at the junction box, at the tools hanging on the far wall, at the problem he could solve in 30 minutes if he let himself slip back into that old identity. I could, he said carefully, but I shouldn't. Liability issues. Insurance. If something went wrong, nothing will go wrong. Sloane's voice had shifted, losing its sharp edge. I can see it in your face. You know exactly what needs to be done. That's not the point. Then what is the point? Ethan met her eyes. The point is I'm not that person anymore. I'm the guy who mops your floors and empties your trash, and the second I step outside that role, I'm risking the only job I have left. Sloane was quiet for a long moment, studying him with an intensity that made Ethan want to look away. He didn't. What's your name? She finally asked. Ethan Cross. Well, Ethan Cross. She pulled out her phone, typing quickly. I'm sending an email to our facilities director right now, authorizing you to perform emergency repairs in my presence. If anyone questions it, they answer to me. Will that suffice? You don't even know me. No, but I know desperation when I see it, and I know competence when I see it. And right now you're the only person in this building who knows how to fix this problem. She finished typing and looked up. So, will you help? Ethan should have said no. Should have called Derek again. Should have waited for proper maintenance. Should have stayed in his lane. But he could feel it, that old pull, the satisfaction of diagnosing a problem and knowing exactly how to solve it. The part of him that had built a business from nothing, that had taken pride in work well done. The part of him that hadn't felt useful in 18 months. I'll need tools, he said. Sloane's smile was small, but genuine. Take whatever you need. 40 minutes later, the power was back on. Ethan climbed down from the ladder, his hands dirty with electrical grease and his shirt sticking to his back with sweat. The junction box was properly sealed now, the damaged connection replaced with a new one from the spare parts inventory. The breakers had reset cleanly, and the building systems hummed with their usual efficiency. Sloane had watched the entire time, asking occasional questions that revealed a sharp intelligence applied to systems she didn't fully understand. Ethan found himself explaining as he worked, falling into the old rhythm of teaching clients about their buildings. So the arcing was caused by thermal expansion, Sloane said, more statement than question. Right. The metal expands and contracts with temperature changes. Over time, if the connection isn't tight enough, you get gaps. Gaps create resistance. Resistance creates heat. Heat creates more expansion, and the cycle continues until something fails. Ethan wiped his hands on a rag. Someone probably installed this junction box 15 years ago and never checked it again. Preventive maintenance. Exactly. Sloane tilted her head. Why aren't you still running your company? The question landed like a punch. Ethan focused on gathering tools, buying time. Life happened, he said finally. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. He could feel her watching him, weighing whether to push. She didn't, which surprised him. Well, she straightened her suit jacket. Thank you. You just saved me from explaining to the Tokyo office why our conference call got cut off mid-presentation. Just doing my job. No, your job is mopping floors. This was something else. Sloane pulled out a business card, black with silver lettering. If you ever decide you want to do something else again, call me. Ethan took the card reflexively, reading the embossed text. Sloane Voss, CEO, Voss Industries. I don't understand, he said. You have skills this building needs, skills that are wasted on a mop handle. Sloane headed for the door, then paused. Think about it. I pay well for competence. She left, her heels clicking down the hallway, leaving Ethan alone in the mechanical room with a business card and a knot of complicated feelings in his chest. He should throw it away. Should forget this whole night happened. Should go back to being invisible. Because visibility meant risk, and risk meant losing whatever fragile stability he'd managed to build. But he slipped the card into his pocket instead, right next to his phone with its background photo of Lily's gap-toothed smile. The eastern sky was starting to lighten when Ethan finally clocked out. Marcus raised an eyebrow as he passed the security desk. Heard you saved the day up there. Just fixed a loose connection. Ms. Voss seemed impressed. She doesn't impress easy. Ethan shrugged, too tired for conversation. He just wanted to get home, check on Lily, maybe grab 2 hours of sleep before she woke up. The drive home blurred with exhaustion. He pulled into the apartment parking lot as the sun crested the horizon, painting everything in shades of gold that felt too beautiful for how he felt. Inside, Mrs. Chen's door opened before he could reach his own. Lily's still asleep, she whispered. Went down around 9:30. No problems. Thank you. Ethan, Mrs. Chen caught his arm. There was a man here earlier, around 11, asking questions about you and Lily. Ethan's blood went cold. What kind of questions? What hours you work, whether Lily stays alone, how often she's with me. Mrs. Chen's expression was troubled. I didn't tell him anything, but I thought you should know. Did he say who he was? No, but he had an expensive car and an expensive suit and the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. You know the type. Ethan knew. Martin Hale's lawyer, probably. Or a private investigator building a case. Evidence that Lily was left with neighbors, that Ethan worked nights, that the situation was exactly as unstable as the Hales claimed. Thank you for telling me, he managed. Be careful, Ethan. Whatever this is, be careful. He entered his apartment, locking the door behind him. Lily's bedroom door was cracked open, and he could see her small form curled under the covers, one arm flung over her favorite stuffed elephant. Safe. Sleeping. Unaware that her world might be about to fracture again. Ethan collapsed onto the couch, every muscle screaming for rest. But sleep wouldn't come. He kept seeing Sloane's card, feeling its weight in his pocket. Kept hearing her words. I pay well for competence. What if he could make more money? What if he could afford a better apartment in a better neighborhood, with fewer sirens and sturdier walls? What if he could prove to the Hales and to himself that he was enough? Or what if this was exactly the kind of desperate thinking that led to disaster? His phone buzzed. A text from a number he didn't recognize. This is Sloane Voss. I meant what I said. Call me when you're ready. Ethan stared at the message, his thumb hovering over the delete button. He should erase it. Should forget tonight happened. Should stay in his lane. But he saved the number instead, adding it to his contacts with trembling fingers. Then he finally closed his eyes, falling into shallow sleep filled with dreams of business cards and custody papers, and the sound of Lily's laughter echoing through rooms he could no longer afford. The custody petition arrived on a Tuesday. Ethan had just gotten Lily off to school, his eyes gritty from another sleepless night, when he found the envelope wedged in his door. Official letterhead. Legal weight. The kind of paper that changed lives whether you wanted it to or not. He stood in the hallway for a full minute, envelope in hand, before Mrs. Chen's door cracked open. "Bad news?" she asked quietly. Ethan didn't answer. He stepped into his apartment, closed the door, and opened the envelope with hands that had stayed steady through Mia's diagnosis, through bankruptcy proceedings, through 18 months of grinding poverty, but shook now. The words swam. Petition for temporary custody, best interests of the minor child, inadequate living conditions, unstable employment. Martin and Diane Hale, petitioners. Ethan Cross, respondent. Hearing scheduled for 3 weeks from today. 3 weeks to prove he was enough. 3 weeks before a mediator decided if loving his daughter mattered as much as the Hales' bank account. Ethan read the petition 3 times, each pass making his chest tighter. They'd been thorough. Everything was documented: his night shift schedule, the 2-bedroom apartment, Mrs. Chen's assistance, even the fact that he'd been late picking Lily up from school twice last month when the bus broke down. Late. Not absent, not neglectful, just late. But in legal language, it became evidence of unreliability. His phone buzzed. A text from his supervisor at the janitorial company. "Need you to cover floors 10-14 tonight." Carlos called out sick. Ethan stared at the message. Extra floors meant extra hours. Maybe an additional $100 this week. Money he desperately needed, especially now with legal fees looming. But it also meant less sleep, more exhaustion. Exactly the kind of thing the Hales would use against him. He texted back, "I'll do it." What choice did he have? The day crawled past in a fog. Ethan tried to sleep but couldn't, his mind chewing through worst-case scenarios. He researched family law attorneys online, wincing at hourly rates that might as well have been written in a foreign language. The free legal aid clinics had waiting lists measured in months. 3 weeks wasn't months. By the time he needed to pick up Lily from school, Ethan had consumed enough coffee to make his hands tremble and accomplished exactly nothing useful. Lily bounced into the truck, chattering about a science project on butterflies. She showed him a worksheet covered in careful crayon drawings, each wing meticulously detailed. "Mrs. Patterson said mine was the best in class," she announced proudly. "That's because it is the best," Ethan said, and meant it. "You're brilliant, Lilybug." "Like Mom was?" The question hit sideways. Lily didn't talk about Mia often anymore, and when she did, it was usually in these offhand moments that broke Ethan's heart with their casual grief. "Exactly like Mom," he managed. "She would have loved this project." Lily studied her worksheet. "I don't remember her voice anymore. Is that bad?" Ethan had to pull over. He put the truck in park on a side street, hands gripping the wheel so tight his knuckles went white. "Come here, Bug." Lily unbuckled and climbed across the bench seat. Ethan wrapped his arms around her, breathing in the scent of school soap and kid shampoo and the specific sweetness that was just her. "It's not bad," he said into her hair. "Memory is weird. Sometimes it holds on to things we don't expect and lets go of things we want to keep. But that doesn't mean Mom's gone. She's in your butterfly drawings and your laugh and the way you wrinkle your nose when you concentrate. Okay?" "Okay." Lily's voice was small. "Daddy, are you sad?" "A little, but I'm also really, really proud of you. Can both be true?" "I think so." They sat there for another minute, Ethan holding his daughter and trying to memorize the weight of her, the trust in the way she leaned against him. If the Hales won their petition, how many more moments like this would he get? The thought made him want to put the truck in drive and just go, pack a bag, take Lily, disappear somewhere the Hales couldn't find them, start over with new names and a new life. But that was fear talking, that was desperation, and Lily deserved better than a father who ran. "Come on," he said finally, "let's get you home. Mrs. Chen's making dumplings tonight." "The good kind?" "The best kind." Lily brightened immediately, resilience bouncing back like it always did at 7 years old. Ethan wished he had half her ability to shed worry and return to joy. That night at Meridian Tower, exhaustion settled into his bones like concrete. The extra floors meant extra work, and by midnight Ethan was moving on autopilot, his body performing tasks while his mind spiraled through legal nightmares. He was emptying trash on floor 12 when he heard footsteps behind him. Working late, Mr. Cross. Ethan turned. Sloane Voss stood in the hallway, still in a business suit despite the hour, tablet tucked under one arm. She looked crisp and alert in a way that made Ethan acutely aware of how he looked, exhausted, rumpled, smelling of industrial cleaner. Could say the same about you, he said. Product launch in 6 days. Sleep is optional. She tilted her head. You didn't call. It took Ethan a moment to understand. The business card. Her offer. That felt like it had happened years ago instead of days. Been busy, he said. I can see that. Sloane's eyes tracked across his face, cataloging details he probably didn't want cataloged. You look terrible. Thanks. That wasn't an insult. That was concern. She paused. Are you all right? The question was so unexpected, so genuinely asked, that Ethan almost answered honestly, almost told this near stranger about custody petitions and impossible choices and the way fear tasted like copper in the back of his throat. Instead, he said, Fine, just a long week. It's Tuesday. Long week so far, then. Sloane studied him for another moment, then seemed to make a decision. Come with me. I'm working. Consider it a consultation. I'm bringing you to look at our server room. The HVAC system keeps cycling incorrectly. She was already walking, assuming he'd follow. Ethan hesitated, then grabbed his cart and followed. What else was he going to do? Tell the CEO no? The server room was on floor 21, behind multiple security doors that Sloane bypassed with keycard swipes. Inside, rows of servers hummed under inadequate ventilation, the air warm and stale despite the system running at full capacity. Ethan assessed the space immediately, old instincts kicking in. Your intake vents are too small. The system's working overtime trying to cool a space that can't get enough fresh air circulation. Can it be fixed? Sure. Bigger vents, better duct routing, maybe an additional unit if the load's too high. He pointed to a ceiling panel. That duct run looks like it was added aftermarket. Probably when you expanded server capacity without upgrading the cooling system to match. How long to fix it? Properly? A crew could do it in 2 days, but you'd need to shut down the servers during installation. Sloane made a note on her tablet. And if I hired you to design the upgrade? I'm a janitor. You're a former HVAC contractor who still knows more about these systems than anyone else I've talked to. She looked up from her tablet. I'm serious about this, Ethan. I need people who can solve problems, not just push mops. I can't. Why not? Because taking risks right now could cost him everything. Because changing jobs meant changing circumstances, and changing circumstances meant giving the Hales ammunition. Because staying invisible was safer than being seen. Personal reasons, Ethan said. Those reasons wouldn't happen to involve a family court case, would they? Ethan's blood went cold. How do you... I didn't, but I do now. Sloane set down her tablet. You have that look. The one people get when they're fighting battles they can't talk about. I've seen it before. This conversation is over. Ethan turned to leave. Wait. Sloane's voice stopped him. I'm not trying to pry. I'm trying to help. You can't help with this. Maybe not, but I can tell you that running from opportunities because you're scared won't make your situation better. It'll just make you more tired. She paused. And you're already exhausted. Ethan turned back. You don't know anything about my situation. Then tell me. Why do you care? Because I recognize talent being wasted. Because I hate seeing competent people ground down by circumstances. Because... Sloane stopped, seeming to reconsider her words. Because I've been where you are. Different details, same desperate feeling, and I remember what it was like when someone finally saw past the desperation to the person underneath. The honesty in her voice cut through Ethan's defenses. He found himself talking before he could stop. My in-laws filed for custody of my daughter. They think I can't provide for her, that my job, my apartment, my whole life proves I'm not enough. The words came out flat, drained of emotion. The hearing's in 3 weeks. Sloane was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was careful. What do you need? A miracle. A time machine. A bank account that doesn't make me want to cry. Ethan laughed, but it came out bitter. What I need is to be someone other than who I am. That's not what your daughter needs. You don't know my daughter. No, but I know that children don't need perfect lives. They need present parents. Consistent love, someone who shows up. Sloane picked up her tablet again. The job offer stands. HVAC consultant, contract basis to start. Design the server room upgrade, and we'll go from there. Pays $60 an hour, flexible schedule. $60 an hour. Ethan's brain did the math automatically. At even 20 hours a week, that was almost double what he made mopping floors. Money for a better apartment, money for legal fees, money to prove he could provide. But also change, risk, visibility. I need to think about it, he said. Fair enough, but don't think too long. The offer has an expiration date. Sloane headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth. I don't think you're not enough. I think you're someone who's been dealt a terrible hand and is still showing up every day. That's more than enough. She left, and Ethan stood alone in the server room with the hum of inadequate ventilation and the weight of impossible choices. The next 2 weeks blurred into a nightmare of sleepless nights and mounting dread. Ethan couldn't afford an attorney, so he prepared for the hearing himself, printing out bank statements and rental agreements and Lily's perfect attendance record from school. Evidence that he was trying, that he cared, that he deserved to keep his daughter. But every document felt inadequate against the Hales' resources. They could afford lawyers who knew which words mattered in family court. They could present photographs of spacious bedrooms and safe neighborhoods and opportunities Ethan couldn't match. The only thing he had was the truth. He hoped it would be enough. Lily sensed something was wrong but didn't ask directly. She just stayed closer than usual, her small hand finding his whenever they were together. At night, she'd appear in his doorway, unable to sleep, and Ethan would read to her until her breathing evened out. "Daddy?" she whispered one night. "Are Grandma and Grandpa mad at us?" "Not at you, Bug. Never at you." "But at you?" Ethan chose his words carefully. "They're sad about Mom. And sometimes when people are sad, they get confused about how to help. They think they're doing the right thing, even when they're not." "Are they trying to take me away?" The question pierced him. He'd tried so hard to shield her from this, but children knew. They always knew. "They're trying to help in a way that doesn't make sense," he said finally. "But I'm not going to let anything bad happen, okay? Promise?" Ethan pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. "I promise." It was a promise he wasn't sure he could keep, but he'd die trying. On the Thursday before the hearing, Ethan was cleaning floor 23 when Sloane found him again. "Still thinking?" she asked. "Still thinking." "The hearing's Monday, isn't it?" Ethan's hand stilled on the mop handle. "How do you know that?" "You mentioned 3 weeks. That was 2.5 weeks ago, and you look like someone approaching a deadline." Sloane leaned against the wall. "Have you prepared?" "As much as I can." "Do you have representation?" "Can't afford it." "Ethan." Sloane's voice was gentle. "You can't go into family court without a lawyer." "Watch me." "That's not bravery. That's suicide." Ethan turned to face her fully. "What do you want from me? Why do you keep showing up, offering help, asking questions? You're a CEO. I'm a janitor. This doesn't make sense." Sloane was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. 5 years ago, I was working 3 jobs to support my sister through cancer treatment. I was sleeping 4 hours a night, eating once a day, wearing suits I'd bought at thrift stores because I needed to look successful even when I was drowning, and everyone looked through me like I was invisible, like my exhaustion made me less than. She paused, and Ethan saw something raw in her expression. Then someone saw me, really saw me, gave me a chance when I had no right to expect one. That chance became my first contract, which became my first client, which became this. She gestured at the building around them. I built Voss Industries because someone looked past my circumstances to my capability. So when I see someone capable being ground down by a system that values circumstances over character, I pay attention. "Your sister?" Ethan asked quietly. "She survived. Married now, 2 kids, living in Portland." Sloane smiled. "I'm paying forward what I can't pay back." Ethan understood that. The debt to the universe that could never be settled, only passed on. I still don't know if I can accept, he said. Then don't accept the job, but accept this. Sloane pulled out her phone, typed something, then showed him the screen. A name, a phone number, and an email address. Margaret Chen, best family law attorney in the state. I've already called her. She'll represent you pro bono. I can't. You can. She owes me a favor, and this is how I'm calling it in. Sloane's voice was firm. You're going into that hearing with proper representation. That's non-negotiable. Why? Ethan's voice cracked. Why are you doing this? Because your daughter deserves a father who fights for her, and you deserve someone in your corner. Sloane turned to leave, then stopped. Call Margaret tonight. She's expecting you. She walked away, heels clicking on tile, leaving Ethan alone with a mop and a phone number and the first spark of hope he'd felt in weeks. That night, after his shift, Ethan sat in his truck in the parking lot and called Margaret Chen. She answered on the second ring. Mr. Cross, Sloane told me to expect your call. I don't understand why you'd help me. Then let me be clear. I'm helping you because Sloane Voss asked me to, and because I've reviewed your case and I believe you're getting screwed by people who think money trumps love. How's that for motivation? Ethan found himself almost smiling. Direct. I don't have time for anything else. The hearing's Monday. That gives us 3 days to build a defense. Can you meet tomorrow morning? I sleep during the day. I work nights. Then we meet now, my office, 1 hour. It's 4 in the morning, and I'm already here working on a different case. 1 hour, Mr. Cross. We have work to do. Margaret Chen's office was in a high-rise downtown, all glass and steel, and the kind of decor that screamed competence. She was a small woman, maybe 50, with sharp eyes and in sharper suit. She took one look at Ethan's exhausted face and pointed to a chair. Sit. Coffee? Please. She poured 2 cups from a machine that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent, then sat across from him with a legal pad. Tell me everything, she said. Start from when your wife died. Ethan talked for an hour. He told her about the medical bills, the bankruptcy, losing the business, and the house. He told her about the Hales' growing distance, their thinly veiled contempt, the way they looked at him like he'd personally failed their daughter by not being able to save her. He told her about Lily, about Mrs. Chen, about working himself to exhaustion to provide a life that would never measure up to what the Hales could offer. Margaret took notes, asking occasional questions, her expression never changing from professional focus. When Ethan finally ran out of words, she set down her pen. Okay, here's what we're dealing with. The Hales have money and social standing, but they don't have grounds. Loving your child isn't enough for custody transfer. They need to prove you're unfit or that Lily is in danger. Can they prove either? No, but they're going to try. Of course they are. They'll argue your work schedule creates neglect, your financial situation creates instability, your living conditions are inadequate. We're going to counter every single point. Margaret flipped to a fresh page. Your daughter's attendance record is perfect. Her grades? All A's and B's. She's in the gifted program. Good. Medical records? Up to date. Regular checkups, all vaccinations current. Better. Tell me about your relationship with Lily. Daily routines, quality time, how you're involved in her life. Ethan described their mornings together, the way he always made her breakfast before school, the way they did homework at the kitchen table, her small hand gripping a pencil while he checked her math, movie nights on his weekends off, the butterfly wings they'd built together. You're a present father, Margaret said. That's our strongest argument. The Hales can offer material advantages, but they can't offer what Lily already has, a parent who shows up. We emphasize that. Will it be enough? Margaret met his eyes. Honestly, it should be. But family court is unpredictable. We need to be prepared for anything. They worked until dawn, Margaret drilling Ethan on questions he'd likely face, preparing him for the Hales' attorney's tactics. By the time Ethan left her office, the sun was rising, and he felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Not hope, exactly, but maybe the possibility of hope. Maybe that was enough. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation and nervous energy. Ethan went through the motions at work, but his mind was elsewhere. Monday loomed like a storm on the horizon, inevitable and terrifying. On Sunday night, he couldn't work. He called in sick for the first time in 14 months and spent the evening with Lily. They made pancakes for dinner, watched her favorite movie, and built a blanket fort in the living room. Normal things, precious things, things he refused to believe he might lose. When Lily finally fell asleep, Ethan sat in the dark living room and let himself feel the fear he'd been holding back. Tomorrow a stranger would decide if he was enough. Tomorrow his whole world might fracture. His phone buzzed, a text from Sloane. "Good luck tomorrow, you've got this." Then another text, this one from Margaret. "Get some sleep, we're going to win." Ethan didn't sleep, but he held his phone and read those messages over and over, drawing strength from the unexpected kindness of near strangers who decided he was worth fighting for. Morning came too fast and too slow. Ethan got Lily up, made her breakfast, drove her to school like it was any other day. He didn't tell her where he was going after. No need to burden her with adult fears. "Love you, Bug," he said as she climbed out of the truck. "Love you too, Daddy." She turned back, suddenly serious. "Are you okay?" "I will be," he promised. The family court building was downtown, all institutional gray and fluorescent lighting. Margaret met him in the lobby, looking crisp and confident in a navy suit. "Ready?" she asked. "No." "Good. Honest fear is better than false confidence. Come on." They entered the hearing room, smaller than Ethan expected, more like a conference room than a courtroom. The Hales were already seated with their attorney, a silver-haired man who radiated expensive expertise. Diane's eyes met Ethan's across the room, and he saw something in her expression that might have been regret or might have been resolve. Hard to tell. The mediator entered, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She took her seat and opened the file. "We're here regarding the petition filed by Martin and Diane Hale for temporary custody of Lily Marie Cross, currently in the care of her father, Ethan Cross. Let's begin." The Hales' attorney went first, painting a picture of Ethan's life that was technically accurate but emotionally devastating. The night shift job, the two-bedroom apartment, the reliance on neighbors for childcare, the financial instability. Each fact presented as evidence of inadequacy, of a father who couldn't provide what his daughter deserved. Ethan sat there and took it, his hands clenched under the table, Margaret's occasional touch on his arm the only thing keeping him grounded. Then it was their turn. Margaret stood, and Ethan saw why Sloane had called her the best. She didn't argue against the facts, she reframed them. The night shift job became evidence of a father willing to work whatever hours necessary to support his child. The apartment became a home where Lily thrived academically and emotionally. The neighbor assistants became a supportive community that cared for the family. She presented Lily's school records, her medical records, documentation of every way Ethan had shown up as a present, engaged parent despite impossible circumstances. "The Hales can offer material advantages," Margaret said, "but custody decisions aren't about who has more money. They're about who provides the most appropriate care, and by every meaningful measure, Ethan Cross is an exemplary father." The mediator asked questions. Ethan answered honestly, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his gut. He talked about morning routines and homework help and bedtime stories. He talked about the butterfly wings and the dance recital and the way Lily still believed her father could fix anything. Diane testified next, her voice breaking as she described losing her daughter and fearing for her granddaughter's future. Martin spoke about providing stability and opportunity. Their pain was real. Their love for Lily was real. But so was Ethan's. The hearing stretched into its second hour, arguments circling and recircling the same ground. Ethan felt himself flagging, exhaustion and fear blurring together. That's when the door opened. Sloane Voss walked in, dressed in a charcoal suit carrying a leather portfolio. Every head in the room turned. "My apologies for the interruption," she said calmly. "I have information relevant to this case." The mediator's eyebrows rose. "And you are?" "Sloane Voss, CEO of Voss Industries. I employ Mr. Cross." She moved to the table with the confidence of someone accustomed to rooms going quiet when she entered. "May I speak?" The Hales' attorney stood immediately. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. Ms. Voss isn't listed as a witness." "I'm aware," the mediator said dryly. "Ms. Voss, this better be worth the interruption." "It is." Sloane set her portfolio on the table, not sitting, commanding the room from a standing position. I've been listening to this proceeding for the last 20 minutes through the door, and I've heard a lot of speculation about Mr. Cross's character and capability. I'm here to provide facts. Ethan's heart hammered. He hadn't asked her to come, hadn't even told her the exact time of the hearing. Margaret shot him a quick glance that said she hadn't known either. "Go on," the mediator said. 2 weeks ago, Meridian Tower experienced a major electrical failure at 4:30 in the morning. Our entire building lost power across multiple floors during a critical international conference call. Our on-call maintenance supervisor didn't answer his phone. Sloane's voice was crisp, factual. Mr. Cross diagnosed the problem in under 5 minutes, identified a failing junction box that could have caused a fire, and repaired it properly despite the fact that electrical work is not in his job description. He saved my company from potential disaster and possibly saved lives. "That's very commendable," the Hales' attorney said smoothly, "but hardly relevant to the question of—" "I'm not finished." Sloane's tone could have cut glass. "What's relevant is what happened after. I offered Mr. Cross a consulting position, $60 an hour to design HVAC upgrades for our building. He has the expertise. He ran a successful HVAC company for over a decade before personal tragedy forced him to sell. The position would have immediately improved his financial situation." She paused, letting that sink in. "He turned it down. Do you know why?" The room was silent. Even Diane had stopped her quiet crying. "Because he was afraid that changing jobs would jeopardize this custody case. He was afraid that any change in circumstances would be used as evidence of instability, that improving his situation would somehow be twisted into proof he wasn't good enough." Sloane's eyes moved to the Hales. "He turned down an opportunity to provide better for his daughter because he was terrified you'd use it against him. That's what your petition has done to this man. It's made him afraid to accept help." "Ms. Voss," the mediator said quietly, "what exactly are you testifying to?" "I'm testifying to character. I run a company worth $200 million. I employ 300 people. I've interviewed thousands of candidates, worked with hundreds of contractors, and fired more incompetent employees than I can count. I know how to assess capability, integrity, and reliability. And I'm telling you that Ethan Cross possesses all three in abundance." Sloane finally sat, crossing her legs, her posture radiating controlled authority. "In the 2 months I've known Mr. Cross, I've watched him work himself to exhaustion every single night. I've seen him handle emergency situations with calm competence while other people panic. I've seen him turn down opportunities that would benefit him because he won't compromise his daughter's stability. And I've seen him show up every single morning to get that little girl to school, no matter how tired he is, because that's what fathers do." "This is all very touching," the Hales attorney interjected, "but it doesn't address the fundamental issues. Mr. Cross works night shifts. He lives in substandard housing. He relies on neighbors for childcare. He works night shifts because those pay better than day shifts, and he needs every extra dollar. He lives in housing he can afford while still putting food on the table and clothes on his daughter's back. He has built a support network because that's what good parents do. They don't isolate their children, they create community." Sloane's voice was sharp now. "Would you prefer he work less and provide less? That he pay for housing he can't afford and end up evicted? That he refuse all help and pretend he can do everything alone?" The attorney's mouth tightened. The Hales can provide money, material comfort. I'm not disputing that." Sloane leaned forward. "But can they provide what Lily already has? A father who reads to her every night even when he's exhausted? Who helps with homework at the kitchen table? Who builds butterfly wings out of coat hangers because his daughter's creativity matters more than professional appearances?" Diane made a small sound. Martin's hand found hers on the table. "I've done my research," Sloane continued. "I know about Lily's grades, her attendance record, her teacher's notes about how engaged and happy she is, how she talks about her father constantly, how she's thriving despite the loss of her mother. Those aren't the markers of a neglected child. Those are the markers of a child who is deeply loved." Margaret was scribbling notes, her expression carefully neutral, but Ethan caught the slight curve of her lips. The Hales attorney shuffled papers, clearly regrouping. The mediator leaned back in her chair. "Ms. Voss, you've made your position clear, but I have to ask, why are you here? You could have submitted a written statement. You could have called in testimony. Instead, you've taken time from running a major corporation to appear in person at a family court hearing for an employee you've known for 2 months. Why? Sloane was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice had lost its sharp edge, becoming something more personal. Because I know what it's like to be judged for circumstances instead of character. I know what it's like to work 3 jobs and still be told you're not enough. I know what it's like when the system is rigged against you and the only thing you have is the truth about who you are. She paused. And I know what it means when someone shows up for you anyway. Someone showed up for me once. This is me showing up for Ethan Cross. The silence that followed was heavy with meaning. The mediator made a note, her expression unreadable. Mr. and Mrs. Hale, she said finally. Would you like to respond? Martin cleared his throat. He looked older suddenly. The confidence he'd carried into the room diminished. Diane's eyes were red-rimmed, her hands twisted together in her lap. We love our granddaughter, Martin said quietly. That's all this has ever been about. We love her, and we're scared for her future. I understand that, the mediator said, but love and fear don't constitute grounds for custody transfer. Mr. Hale, Mrs. Hale, I need you to be very honest with me. Is there any evidence of actual neglect? Has Lily ever been in danger in her father's care? Has she ever been harmed physically or emotionally? The question hung there. Diane looked at her hands. Martin looked at Ethan, and for the first time since Mia's funeral, Ethan saw something other than contempt in his father-in-law's eyes. No, Martin said finally. Lily has never been in danger. Has she ever expressed unhappiness with her living situation? No. Has she ever asked to live with you instead of her father? Diane's voice was barely a whisper. No, she asks when we're coming to visit her. She talks about Ethan constantly. Her voice broke. She loves him very much. The mediator made another note. Then help me understand what we're doing here, because from where I'm sitting, this looks like grief manifesting as a custody battle, and I can't transfer custody based on grief. We just want her to have the best life possible, Diane said, tears spilling over. We want her to have what Mia had, opportunities, stability, a future without struggling. And you don't think her father wants that? The mediator asked gently. We don't think he can provide it. Can't or hasn't yet, Sloane interjected. Because there's a difference. Ethan Cross is 34 years old. He's rebuilding from catastrophic loss. Give him time and support instead of judgment and legal battles, and I guarantee he'll provide everything Lily needs. You can't guarantee that, the Hales' attorney said. Actually, I can. Because as of this morning, Mr. Cross is officially hired as a senior HVAC consultant for Voss Industries. $60 an hour, 40 hours a week, with benefits including health insurance and a signing bonus sufficient for first and last month's rent on a better apartment. Day shift schedule, flexible hours to accommodate school drop-off and pickup. Ethan's head snapped toward Sloane. What? She didn't look at him. The offer was always open, Mr. Cross. I'm just making it official. I didn't accept. You're accepting now. Unless you want to turn down a job that solves most of the problems the Hales are concerned about. Her eyebrow arched, daring him to argue. Margaret kicked him under the table. Ethan shut his mouth. The Hales' attorney was flipping through papers, clearly thrown. This is highly convenient timing. It's terrible timing, Sloane said flatly. I needed this position filled 2 weeks ago. But Mr. Cross was too afraid of exactly this kind of cynicism to accept. So yes, the timing looks suspicious, but the job is real, the offer is real, and Mr. Cross's qualifications are absolutely real. Would you like to see his resume? His business license from when he ran Cross HVAC? Letters of recommendation from contractors he worked with? She pulled documents from her portfolio, sliding them across the table. The attorney glanced at them, his expression tightening. The mediator held up a hand. Let's take a step back. Ms. Voss, I appreciate your testimony and your offer of employment, but I need to be clear. This hearing isn't about whether Mr. Cross can get a better job. It's about whether he's currently providing adequate care for his daughter. Can we refocus on that question? Of course, Sloane said, and my testimony is that he absolutely is. I've seen it firsthand. The man shows up. Every single day, despite exhaustion, despite financial stress, despite being ground down by people who should be supporting him. He shows up for his daughter. That's what matters. It's not enough, Diane said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. She was crying openly now, makeup streaking down her face. I'm sorry, but it's not enough. Love isn't enough. Mia loved us and we loved her and she still died. Loving Lily doesn't protect her from the world. It doesn't guarantee she'll be safe or happy or successful. You're right, Ethan said quietly. It was the first time he'd spoken since Sloane arrived. All eyes turned to him. Margaret tensed beside him, but Ethan continued. You're absolutely right, Diane. Love isn't enough. It didn't save Mia. It didn't stop the cancer or pay the medical bills or prevent me from losing everything we built together. Love didn't do any of that. He paused, gathering himself. But love is what got me out of bed every morning after Mia died, when all I wanted to do was stop existing. Love is what made me sell the business and the house and everything we owned, trying to buy her more time. Love is what keeps me working nights I can barely survive, because Lily deserves a father who doesn't give up. You're right that love isn't enough, but it's everything I have left, and I'm not going to apologize for giving it to our daughter. Diane was sobbing now. Martin's arm went around her shoulders, but his eyes never left Ethan's face. We failed her, Diane said through her tears. We failed Mia. We should have caught it earlier, should have pushed for more tests, should have... There was nothing any of us could have done, Ethan said, his voice breaking. I've spent 18 months torturing myself with the same thoughts. What if I'd noticed the symptoms sooner? What if we'd tried different treatments? What if I'd been able to afford the experimental therapy in Germany? What if? What if? What if? It doesn't change anything. She's still gone. And we can't lose Lily too, Martin said roughly. You're not losing her. I'm not trying to keep her from you. I never was. Ethan leaned forward. But you can't take her from me because you're scared. That's not love. That's fear controlling you the same way it's been controlling me. The mediator let the silence stretch. When she finally spoke, her voice was gentle. Mr. and Mrs. Hale, I'm going to ask you a difficult question. If this custody transfer went through and Lily came to live with you, what do you think would happen? Diane looked confused. She'd be safe, cared for. Would she be happy? The question landed like a stone in still water. Diane's mouth opened, closed. She'd adjust, Martin said, but there was no conviction in his voice. Would she? The mediator pressed. Or would she grieve? Would she ask for her father constantly? Would she feel punished for something she doesn't understand? Would she wonder why the adults in her life chose to tear her world apart instead of figuring out how to support each other? Neither Hale answered. I've presided over hundreds of custody cases, the mediator continued, and I've learned that children are remarkably resilient when adults give them stable, loving environments. But they're also remarkably fragile when adults prioritize their own needs over the child's well-being. So I'm asking you both to think very carefully. Is this petition truly about Lily's best interests, or is it about your need to feel like you're protecting something you couldn't protect before? The question hung in the air, brutal in its honesty. Ethan watched emotions play across Diane's face. Denial, anger, grief, and finally something that might have been recognition. I don't know anymore, she whispered. I can't lose her too. I can't. Then don't, Sloane said, her voice surprisingly gentle. Support her father instead of fighting him. Be grandparents instead of adversaries. Help instead of hinder. You don't have to choose between loving Lily and supporting Ethan. They're not mutually exclusive. Margaret spoke up for the first time since Sloane's arrival. My client has never sought to limit the Hales' access to their granddaughter. He's never tried to keep them away. Even after this petition was filed, he continued to facilitate their relationship with Lily. That's not the action of someone trying to exclude family. That's the action of a father who understands that his daughter needs all the love she can get. The Hales' attorney leaned over, whispering to his clients. Ethan couldn't hear what was being said, but he could see Martin's shoulders slump, could see Diane shaking her head. Finally, Martin straightened. Martin, could we have a moment? In private? The mediator nodded. Let's take a 15-minute recess. Everyone filed out of the hearing room into the hallway. Ethan's legs felt weak. He leaned against the wall, adrenaline draining away and leaving exhaustion in its wake. Sloane appeared beside him, holding a bottle of water. Drink. He took it automatically. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. The job offer is real. I wasn't lying about needing the position filled, and I wasn't lying about you being qualified. The timing is awkward, but the opportunity is genuine. She paused. You're accepting it, by the way. That wasn't a request. You can't just, I can, and I am. You're too stubborn to help yourself, so I'm helping you. Deal with it. Margaret joined them, a slight smile on her face. That was quite an entrance, Ms. Voss. I've always believed in making an impact. Sloane glanced at Ethan. How are you holding up? I don't know. I can't tell if that went well or if I just made everything worse. You told the truth. That's never worse. Margaret checked her watch. We'll know soon enough. The 15 minutes felt like hours. Ethan paced the hallway, unable to sit still, his mind replaying every word spoken in that room. He'd exposed himself completely, stripped away all pretense and armor, and now he had to wait to see if honesty was enough. Finally, the mediator's clerk appeared. We're ready to reconvene. Back in the hearing room, the Hales sat close together, Diane's eyes red but dry. Their attorney looked resigned. Ethan's pulse hammered in his ears. The mediator settled into her seat, reviewing her notes one more time. When she looked up, her expression was kind but firm. I've heard testimony from both parties, reviewed all submitted evidence, and considered the testimony provided by Ms. Voss. I've also had a private conversation with Mr. and Mrs. Hale. She paused. Before I issue my ruling, I want to address something. This hearing has revealed a family in pain. You've all suffered tremendous loss, and that loss is manifesting in fear and conflict. But the person most affected by this conflict is the one person not present in this room, Lily Cross. The mediator folded her hands. Lily is 7 years old. She's already lost her mother. She's already experienced more grief than most children her age can comprehend. And now the adults in her life are fighting over who gets to care for her, as if she's a prize to be won rather than a child who needs stability and love from all of you. Ethan's throat tightened. Beside him, Margaret sat perfectly still. I've reviewed Lily's school records, her medical records, and her teacher's reports. By every measurable standard, she is thriving. She's academically successful, socially engaged, and emotionally healthy. These are not the markers of a neglected or endangered child. These are the markers of a child receiving excellent parenting. The mediator's eyes moved to Ethan. Mr. Cross, you've been dealt an extraordinarily difficult hand. You've lost your wife, your business, your financial security, and your social standing. Most people would have crumbled under that weight. But instead, you've shown up every single day for your daughter. You've worked jobs that don't match your skills. You've accepted help when you needed it. You've built a support system and maintained your daughter's routines despite overwhelming obstacles. That is not inadequate parenting. That is heroic parenting. Ethan felt tears prickling behind his eyes. He blinked them back. Mr. and Mrs. Hale, your love for your granddaughter is not in question. Your desire to provide for her is understandable. But love and good intentions are not sufficient grounds for custody transfer. The standard in these cases is clear. Custody changes only when the current arrangement is demonstrably harmful to the child's well-being, and there is no evidence, none, that Lily is being harmed in her father's care. Diane gripped Martin's hand. The older man's jaw was tight, but he nodded slowly. Therefore, I am denying the petition for temporary custody. Lily Cross will remain in the primary care of her father, Ethan Cross. The words washed over Ethan like a wave. He heard them but couldn't quite process them, couldn't quite believe that it was over, that he'd won, that Lily was still his. However, the mediator continued, I am also issuing a recommendation. Mr. Cross, the Hales clearly love their granddaughter and want to be part of her life. I strongly encourage you to facilitate that relationship. Regular visits, involvement in school events, holidays together. Family court is not the place to resolve grief and fear. Family gatherings are. I never wanted to keep them away, Ethan managed. They're Lily's family. I understand that. And Mr. and Mrs. Hale, I encourage you to support Mr. Cross's parenting rather than undermining it.
This child has already lost too much. She doesn't need to lose the extended family who loves her because adults can't find a way to coexist peacefully. Martin stood slowly. He looked at Ethan across the room, and for a long moment neither man moved. Then Martin extended his hand. Ethan crossed the space between them and took it. The handshake was firm, both men holding on perhaps a moment longer than necessary. When they released, Diane was there, her hand touching Ethan's arm. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I was so scared of losing her that I almost destroyed everything. I'm so sorry." "I understand," Ethan said, and found that he meant it. "I've been scared too." "Can we?" Diane's voice caught. "Can we still see her? Be part of her life?" "Of course, you're her grandparents. She needs you." Diane's face crumpled, but this time the tears seemed different, cleansing rather than bitter. Martin's arm went around her shoulders, and for the first time in months, Ethan saw the people who'd raised Mia rather than the adversaries who'd tried to take Lily. The mediator stood. "This hearing is concluded. I'll file my ruling today, and you'll receive official notification within the week, but for all practical purposes, this matter is resolved." People began gathering their things, the room filling with the rustle of papers and quiet conversations. Ethan stood frozen, still processing, until Margaret gripped his shoulder. "You did it," she said simply. "We did it." "No, you did it. I just made sure the law was on your side. But your honesty, your pain, your love for your daughter, that's what won this case." Sloane appeared on his other side. "Congratulations. Now, about that job." "I accept," Ethan said. "And thank you for everything." "Don't thank me yet. I'm a demanding boss and I expect excellence." But her eyes were warm. "Start Monday. We'll discuss schedules and logistics then. For now, go get your daughter and tell her everything's going to be okay." Ethan nodded, not trusting his voice. He shook hands with Margaret, accepted a business card with her direct number in case he needed anything, and somehow made it out of the building on legs that felt like water. The morning had turned into afternoon, spring sunshine warming the downtown streets. Ethan sat in his truck in the parking lot and called the school. "Hi, this is Ethan Cross. Could I speak to Lily's teacher?" Mrs. Patterson came on the line. "Mr. Cross, is everything all right?" "Everything's fine. Better than fine. Could I pick Lily up early? I'd like to surprise her." "Of course. I'll have her ready in the office." 20 minutes later, Ethan walked into the elementary school office. Lily sat on a bench, swinging her legs, her backpack beside her. When she saw him, her face lit up. "Daddy, are you okay?" He knelt down, pulling her into a hug that probably lasted too long, but he didn't care. She was his. Still his. Always his. "I'm perfect, Bug. Want to play hooky for the rest of the day?" "Really? Really? Ice cream?" "Yes." They drove to Lily's favorite ice cream parlor, a local place with outdoor tables and flavors that changed weekly. Lily ordered chocolate chip cookie dough. Ethan ordered coffee, needing the caffeine more than sweetness. They sat in the sunshine and Lily chattered about her day, about the spelling test she'd aced and the boy who'd brought his hamster for show and tell. Normal 7-year-old concerns, blissfully unaware of how close their world had come to fracturing. "Daddy?" Lily asked around a mouthful of ice cream. "You seem happy." "I am happy." "How come?" Ethan considered his words carefully. Sometimes grown-ups have problems they have to work through. And today I worked through a big problem and everything turned out okay. With Grandma and Grandpa? He should have known she'd put it together. She was Mia's daughter, sharp and observant and impossibly wise for her age. "Yeah, with Grandma and Grandpa, but it's all better now. We're going to see them soon and everything's going to be different. Better." "Good." Lily returned to her ice cream, satisfied with that explanation. "I like Grandma and Grandpa, but I like living with you more." "Yeah?" "Yeah. You make the best pancakes, and you always read the funny voices in books, and you let me stay up late on Fridays." She grinned, chocolate smeared on her chin. "You're the best daddy." Ethan's vision blurred. He reached across the table and wiped the chocolate away with a napkin, the gesture tender and automatic. "You're the best daughter," he said. "And I promise, Bug, things are going to get better from here." "They're already pretty good."
Lily said simply. And sitting there in the spring sunshine, watching his daughter attack her ice cream with single-minded joy, Ethan thought maybe she was right. Maybe they'd been good all along, and he'd just been too scared and tired to see it. His phone buzzed. A text from Sloan. Remember, Monday, 8 a.m. Don't be late. Another text, this one from Margaret. Official ruling filed. You're officially Lily's legal guardian with full custody. Congratulations. And finally, unexpectedly, a text from a number he hadn't heard from in months. Martin Hale. Thank you for being gracious. We'd like to take Lily to the park this Saturday, if that's all right. We have some apologies to make and some bridges to rebuild. Ethan typed back. Saturday works. She'd love that. He set his phone down and watched Lily, memorizing this moment. The way the sunlight caught in her dark hair, the gap in her smile where she'd lost her first tooth last month, the absolute trust in her eyes when she looked at him. His daughter, still his daughter, always his daughter. Come on, Bug, he said when she'd finished. Let's go home. They drove back to the apartment, and for the first time in months, Ethan didn't see inadequacy when he pulled into the parking lot. He just saw home. Their home. Imperfect, but theirs. Mrs. Chen was watering her plants again. She took one look at Ethan's face and smiled. Good news? She called. The best news, he called back. Inside their apartment, Lily immediately sprawled on the floor with her coloring books. Ethan collapsed on the couch, exhaustion finally catching up with him. He'd been awake for nearly 30 hours, his body running on adrenaline and fear, and finally, relief. Daddy? Lily's voice drifted from the floor. Can we have spaghetti for dinner? Absolutely. And can I stay up late to watch a movie? It's Monday, Bug. But it's a special Monday, I can tell. Ethan smiled. Yeah, it's a special Monday. One movie. Lily cheered and Ethan let his eyes close just for a moment. He'd make spaghetti soon. He'd watch whatever animated movie Lily chose. He'd read her 2 bedtime stories instead of 1. But right now, in this moment, he let himself feel it. The weight lifting, the fear receding, the future opening up in front of them. Uncertain, but possible. They'd be okay. More than okay. They'd be exactly what they needed to be, together. Monday morning arrived with the kind of nervous energy that felt like the first day of school. Ethan stood in front of his closet at 6 a.m., staring at clothes he hadn't worn in almost 2 years. The button-down shirts hung loose on him now, remnants of a time when he'd weighed 20 pounds more and carried himself differently. He chose a blue one that didn't look too dated, paired it with slacks that he had to cinch with a belt, and studied himself in the bathroom mirror. He looked like someone trying to remember who he used to be. Lily appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. You look fancy, Daddy. I have a new job starting today, remember? The one where you fix air conditioning? Something like that. Ethan knelt to her level, adjusting the collar of her pajamas. Mrs. Chen's going to get you to school this morning. I'll pick you up this afternoon. New schedule, remember? Day job instead of night job. Lily nodded seriously. Does that mean you won't be tired all the time? The question hit harder than it should have. Ethan pulled her into a hug, breathing in the sleepy, warm scent of her hair. Yeah, Bug, that's exactly what it means. Mrs. Chen knocked on the door at 7:15, right on schedule. She took one look at Ethan in his work clothes and beamed. Very handsome, very professional. You'll do wonderful. I hope so. Ethan kissed Lily's forehead. Be good for Mrs. Chen, okay? I'm always good, Lily said with the confidence of a child who genuinely believed it. The drive downtown felt surreal. Ethan had made this trip hundreds of times before, but always at night, always in his janitor's uniform, always invisible. Now he was pulling into the visitor parking at 8 a.m. in business casual, checking in at the main lobby desk like he belonged there. The security guard who checked his ID wasn't Marcus. This was a younger guy, professional and polite, who directed Ethan to the 20th floor without the casual familiarity of night shift workers. In the elevator, Ethan caught his reflection in the polished doors. He still looked tired, still looked like someone recovering from years of hitting bottom, but there was something different in his eyes. Hope, maybe. Or just the absence of constant terror. The elevator dinged. 20th floor. Voss Industries' main reception area was all glass and steel and minimalist furniture that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent. A receptionist looked up from her desk, smiling professionally. Ethan Cross? That's me. Ms. Voss is expecting you. Conference room B, just down that hall. Ethan followed the directions, his footsteps quiet on expensive carpet. The conference room door was open. Inside, Sloane sat at a long table with another man, older, maybe 60, with silver hair and the weathered look of someone who'd spent decades working with his hands. Ethan. Sloane stood, gesturing him in. This is Robert Chen, our facilities director. Robert, this is Ethan Cross. Robert's handshake was firm, assessing. Sloane tells me you used to run Cross HVAC. I did. About 15 years, mostly commercial work. And you sold because? The question was direct, no dancing around. Ethan appreciated that. Personal circumstances, medical bills, had to liquidate assets. Robert nodded, no judgment in his expression. I looked up your company, pulled some references from contractors you worked with. They all said the same thing, best systems designer they'd ever partnered with. So why are you working as a janitor? Because it was the job I could get when I needed one fast. Fair enough. Robert pulled out a folder. Here's our situation. Meridian Tower is 43 floors of aging HVAC infrastructure. Systems were installed in the 90s, patched and updated over the years, but never fully modernized. We've got inefficiencies everywhere, hot spots, cold spots, and energy bills that make the accountants cry. Sloane wants a full assessment and redesign proposal. For the entire building? For our floors initially, 20 through 25. If it works, we'll pitch it to building management for tower-wide implementation. Robert slid the folder across the table. Specs are in there. Building plans, current system documentation, energy usage data for the last 5 years. I need a preliminary assessment in 2 weeks. Ethan opened the folder, scanning the documents. His brain immediately started cataloging problems. Undersized ductwork here, inefficient zoning there, outdated control systems throughout. This was the kind of project he used to dream about, the kind that required real engineering instead of just maintenance. 2 weeks is tight, he said. Can you do it? Ethan met Robert's eyes. Yes? Then welcome aboard. Robert stood, shaking his hand again. Your office is next door, not fancy, but it's got a desk and a computer. HR will get you set up with credentials and access cards. Any questions? What are my hours? Flexible? As long as the work gets done and you're available for site visits when needed, I don't care if you work 8 to 4 or 10 to 6. Robert paused. Sloane mentioned you've got a daughter, school age? 7, second grade. Then make your schedule work around hers. This job is important, but it's not more important than being a father. Anyone tells you different, you send them to me. The casual acceptance of that priority made Ethan's throat tight. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This project is going to be brutal. But if you pull it off, you'll have your pick of consulting gigs in this city. Robert headed for the door, then paused. One more thing. The janitorial staff still work nights in this building. Some of them will remember you. Treat them with respect. Of course. I mean it. I've seen people get new positions and immediately forget where they came from. Don't be that guy. I won't, Ethan promised, and meant it. Robert left. Sloane remained, studying Ethan with that assessing gaze he was starting to recognize. You okay? She asked. I think so. This is just surreal. It's just a job, Ethan. You've done this work before. Not in 2 years. Not since... He stopped, unsure how to finish that sentence. Not since your life fell apart? Sloane said it matter-of-factly, no pity in her tone. Yeah, but you're still the same person who built a successful company. That knowledge didn't disappear just because circumstances changed. What if I can't do it anymore? What if I've been away too long? Then you'll figure it out as you go. That's what consultants do. We solve problems we don't have immediate answers for. She stood, straightening her suit jacket. I'm not worried about your technical skills. I'm worried about you sabotaging yourself because you don't think you deserve this. The observation was too accurate to be comfortable. Ethan looked away. I've seen it before, Sloane continued. People who've been beaten down so thoroughly they can't accept good things when they come. They find ways to fail because failure feels safer than hope. Don't do that. I'll try. Do better than try. Lily needs you to succeed here. Not just for the money, but because she needs to see her father thriving instead of just surviving. Sloan moved toward the door. Your office is 20B. Get settled. Read through those specs. We'll meet Friday to discuss your initial findings. She left, and Ethan sat alone in the conference room with a folder full of HVAC specifications and a feeling he couldn't quite name. It wasn't happiness exactly. It was more like the absence of constant dread, the lifting of weight he'd carried so long he'd forgotten what standing upright felt like. Office 20B was small but functional. A desk, a chair, a computer, and a window that actually opened. Ethan set down his folder and just stood there for a moment, looking out at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, Lily was in her classroom learning multiplication tables. Mrs. Chen was probably having her second cup of tea. The Hales were going about their day, hopefully processing everything that had been said in that hearing room, and Ethan was here, in an office with his name on the door, doing work that mattered. His phone buzzed, a text from Margaret Chen. How's the first day? He typed back, surreal but good. Her response came immediately. You've got this. Call if you need anything. Another text, this one from a number he didn't recognize at first, then realized was Martin Hale. Saturday at 2 p.m. for the park? We'll bring a picnic. Ethan hesitated, then replied, Lily would love that. See you then. He set his phone aside and opened the folder, losing himself in specifications and energy data and the familiar satisfaction of diagnosing system failures. Hours passed without notice. When his phone alarm went off at 2:30, time to leave for school pickup, Ethan looked up in surprise at how fast the day had gone. He gathered his things, logged out of the computer, and headed for the elevator. On the way down, he passed a janitor emptying trash in the hallway. The man looked up, recognition flickering across his face. Ethan? That's you? Hey, Marcus. Ethan stopped, shaking his hand. How's it going? Can't complain. Heard you got promoted or something? Consulting position, HVAC work. Marcus grinned. Man, good for you. We were all wondering when someone would figure out you were wasted on a mop. The mop paid the bills. Yeah, but still. This is better, right? This is better, Ethan agreed. They talked for another minute before Ethan excused himself, conscious of the time, but as he walked to his truck, he felt something settle in his chest. Marcus hadn't treated him differently, hadn't resented him for moving up, had just been genuinely happy for a coworker catching a break. Maybe Ethan had forgotten that kindness existed without strings attached. Lily was waiting at the school pickup area, backpack slung over one shoulder, chatting with another girl. When she saw Ethan's truck, she waved enthusiastically and ran over. You're early, she announced, climbing in. New schedule, remember? I get out at 2:30 now. That's so weird. Good weird. Lily buckled herself in. How was your first day? Really good. I worked on designing air conditioning systems for a big building. Like the one where you used to mop? The same one, actually. Lily processed this. So you still go to the same place, but you do different stuff? Exactly. That's cool. Can we get ice cream to celebrate? Ethan glanced at the clock. 3 p.m. They had time before dinner, and why not? Sure, Bug. Ice cream it is. They went to the same parlor as before, Lily ordering the same flavor because 7-year-olds were creatures of habit. This time Ethan got mint chip, feeling celebratory enough for actual ice cream instead of just coffee. Daddy? Lily asked as they sat at their usual table. Are we going to move? The question caught him off guard. What makes you ask that? Mrs. Chen said you got a better job. Better jobs mean more money. More money means we could get a house, right? Ethan chose his words carefully. We could get a better apartment, yeah. Would you want to move? Lily scrunched up her nose, thinking hard. I like our apartment, and I like Mrs. Chen, and I like my school. We wouldn't move far, you'd stay at the same school. Then I guess it would be okay, as long as Mrs. Chen could still visit. She paused, then added with the blunt honesty of childhood, and as long as we get a place where the toilet doesn't make that weird noise. Ethan laughed, Really laughed, for the first time and he couldn't remember how long. Deal. No weird toilet noises in the next place. They finished their ice cream and headed home. Mrs. Chen was waiting on her balcony, waving as they pulled in. Lily ran up to tell her about ice cream and school, while Ethan grabbed the folder from his truck, already thinking about the work he could do after dinner. That became their new routine over the following weeks. Ethan would drop Lily at school, work at Voss Industries until 2:30, pick her up, help with homework, make dinner, and then spend a few hours in the evening reviewing building specs and drafting system designs. It was still long hours, but they were productive hours, creative hours, hours that didn't leave him feeling hollowed out and useless. The preliminary assessment took him 12 days instead of 14. He presented it to Robert and Sloan in Conference Room B, walking them through inefficiencies he'd identified and proposed solutions. Robert asked sharp questions. Sloan took notes. When Ethan finished, they exchanged a look. "This is good work," Robert said finally. "Really good. How confident are you in these numbers?" "Very. I've built in conservative estimates for everything. Worst case scenario, you see a 20% reduction in energy costs. Best case, closer to 35%. And the upfront investment? High. But ROI is under 3 years even with conservative projections." Robert nodded slowly. "I'm going to need you to present this to building management. They control infrastructure upgrades for the whole tower. Think you can handle that?" Ethan's pulse kicked up. Presenting to executives, selling a major project, convincing people to spend serious money. This was the part of running a business he'd actually been good at. The part he'd missed. "Yes," he said. "When?" "2 weeks. I'll set up the meeting." After they left, Ethan sat in the conference room staring at his presentation materials. 2 weeks to refine his pitch, to prepare for questions, to prove he could still do this work at the highest level. His phone rang. Martin Hale's number. Ethan answered cautiously. "Hello?" "Ethan, I hope I'm not interrupting." "No, I just finished a meeting. What's up?" There was a pause, then Martin's voice came back quieter. "Diane and I wanted to talk to you about Saturday. About the park. Would you be willing to join us, instead of just dropping Lily off?" Ethan hadn't expected that. He'd assumed the Hales wanted time alone with their granddaughter, space to rebuild that relationship without him hovering. "Are you sure?" he asked. "We're sure. Diane and I have been talking, a lot, about everything that happened, about what we almost did." Martin's voice was heavy. "We owe you more than an apology, Ethan. We owe you the truth about why we did what we did, and we'd like to have that conversation with you there, if you're willing." "I'll be there," Ethan said. Saturday arrived cool and clear, perfect park weather. Ethan and Lily drove to Memorial Park, where the Hales were already set up at a picnic table near the playground. Diane had brought an elaborate spread, sandwiches, fruit, cookies that looked homemade. Martin stood when they approached, his posture uncertain in a way Ethan had never seen before. "Thank you for coming," Martin said, shaking Ethan's hand. "Of course." Lily immediately ran to hug both grandparents, chattering about school and her upcoming dance recital. Diane's eyes filled with tears as she hugged her granddaughter, and Ethan saw raw love and regret in equal measure. They ate lunch, Lily filling the spaces between adult conversation with stories about her friends and her teacher and the butterfly project that was now hanging in the school hallway. After she'd eaten, she asked if she could go play on the swings. "Stay where we can see you," Ethan said. "I will!" She ran off, and suddenly it was just the 3 adults at the picnic table. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Diane spoke. "I barely slept the night Mia was diagnosed. I just kept thinking, this isn't real. This isn't happening. There's been some mistake." Her voice was soft, almost distant. "And then the oncologist showed us the scans and explained the staging, and I realized there was no mistake. My daughter had cancer, and there was nothing I could do to fix it." Martin's hand found hers on the table. "I'm a fixer," Diane continued. "Always have been. When Mia was little and she scraped her knee, I put on a bandage. When she struggled in school, I hired tutors. When she wanted to go to college, we made sure she could go anywhere she wanted. I fixed things for her. That was my job as her mother." "But you couldn't fix the cancer," Ethan said quietly. "No, and it destroyed me. Watching her deteriorate, knowing I was powerless, knowing all my money and connections and effort couldn't save her, Diane's tears spilled over. When she died, I felt like I'd failed the most important job I'd ever had. I couldn't save my daughter. None of us could, Ethan said. I know that intellectually, but emotionally? Diane shook her head. I needed someone to blame. And you were there, struggling and grieving and losing everything, and it was so easy to look at you and think, if he'd had more money, if he'd had better insurance, if he'd caught it sooner. I thought the same things, Ethan interrupted. I blamed myself for months, still do, some days. Martin spoke up, his voice rough. We blamed you because blaming ourselves was too painful. And then when we saw you with Lily, saw you struggling, we convinced ourselves we could fix this one thing. We couldn't save Mia, but we could save Lily from poverty, from struggle, from everything we were watching you endure. But Lily didn't need saving, Ethan said. No, she needed her father, and we almost took that away from her because we couldn't separate our grief from reality. Martin's eyes were red-rimmed. I'm sorry, Ethan, for the petition, for the accusations, for making you feel like you weren't enough. You were always enough. We just couldn't see past our own pain. Ethan watched Lily on the swings, pumping her legs to go higher, her laughter carrying across the park. She looked happy, whole, loved. I forgive you, he said, and found that he meant it. Not because what you did was okay, but because I understand it. Grief makes us do terrible things sometimes. Believe me, I know. Diane reached across the table, touching his arm. Can we start over? Can we be family again properly this time? We never stopped being family, Ethan said. We just forgot how to act like it. They sat together in the spring sunshine, watching Lily play, and talked about Mia. Not about her death this time, but about her life. The way she used to reorganize the spice cabinet alphabetically. Her terrible singing voice that she inflicted on everyone anyway. The time she'd tried to dye her hair purple in high school and ended up orange. Stories that made them laugh instead of cry. Memories that brought Mia back not as a tragedy, but as a person, flawed and funny and deeply loved. When Lily finally returned, sweaty and exhausted from playing, she climbed into Ethan's lap without hesitation, then reached for Diane's hand. This is nice, she said simply. All of us together. It is nice, Diane agreed, her voice thick. Very nice. They stayed at the park until early evening, the conversation flowing easier as time went on. Martin asked about Ethan's new job. Ethan told them about the HVAC project, about the upcoming presentation to building management. Diane mentioned that Martin had connections on the building's board of directors if Ethan needed any support. I appreciate that, Ethan said carefully, but I need to win this project on merit, not connections. No offense. None taken. Actually, that's exactly what Mia would have said. Martin smiled, and it reached his eyes this time. She always insisted on doing things herself, even when we tried to help. Stubborn, Diane added fondly. Just like her father, and just like Lily. Hey, Lily protested, but she was grinning. When they finally packed up to leave, Diane hugged Ethan in addition to Lily. It was brief, slightly awkward, but genuine. Thank you, she whispered, for giving us another chance. Thank you for asking for one, Ethan replied. The drive home was quiet, Lily dozing in the passenger seat, exhausted from playing. Ethan's mind wandered to the presentation in a week, to the apartment search he needed to start, to the slow rebuilding of extended family that had just begun. For the first time since Mia's diagnosis, the future felt like something other than a threat. It felt like possibility. The presentation to building management went better than Ethan expected. He walked them through the assessment, demonstrated the energy savings, and answered every technical question with the confidence of someone who genuinely knew his field. The facilities director from 2 other major tenants attended, both asking sharp questions about implementation timelines and disruption to business operations. Ethan had answers for everything. By the end of the hour, he could see heads nodding, could sense the shift from skepticism to interest. This is compelling work, Mr. Cross, the building manager said. We'll need to review the full proposal and get board approval, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Robert clapped him on the shoulder as they left the conference room.
Cautiously optimistic means yes in building management speak. You just landed $1 million infrastructure project. The words didn't feel real. Ethan had gone from mopping these floors to redesigning their core systems in less than 2 months. The whiplash was disorienting. What happens if they approve it? He asked. You become the lead consultant for implementation. We'll hire subcontractors for the actual installation work, but you'll design, oversee, and coordinate everything. It'll be 18 months of work, minimum, enough to build your reputation and your bank account. 18 months of stable income. 18 months to prove he could do this work at the highest level. 18 months to build the life Lily deserved. I won't let you down, Ethan said. I know you won't. That's why I'm betting my department's credibility on you. Robert paused. Sloan wants to see you, by the way. Her office, when you have a minute. Ethan had never been to Sloan's office before. It was on the 25th floor, corner position with views of the entire downtown skyline. She was on a phone call when he arrived, but waved him in, gesturing to a chair. I understand the concerns, she was saying into the phone, her tone patient but firm. But we've tested this extensively and the data support's moving forward. I'll send over the revised timeline today. She ended the call and turned her attention to Ethan. I heard the presentation went well. Robert seems to think so. Robert wouldn't say it if he didn't mean it. He's not the encouraging type. Sloan leaned back in her chair. How are you feeling about everything? The job, the schedule, the changes? Good. Overwhelmed sometimes, but good. And Lily? Thriving. She's got her dance recital next week. The butterfly costume is finally finished. Ethan smiled. The Hales are coming to watch. We're all sitting together. That's significant progress. It is. I never thought... Ethan stopped, unsure how to articulate it. I never thought people could come back from something like that custody battle. But we're trying, all of us. Sloan nodded slowly. Family is complicated, but it's worth fighting for when it matters. She paused, seeming to weigh her next words. I wanted to tell you something about why I helped you. You already explained. I told you about my sister, about building this company. That's all true, but there's more. Sloan's expression shifted, becoming more vulnerable than Ethan had ever seen it. 5 years ago, when I was working those 3 jobs, I had a daughter too. Emma. She was 6. The past tense hit Ethan like ice water. Had? Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light while I was driving her to school. Sloan's voice was steady, but her hands weren't. She died instantly. I spent 3 months in physical therapy learning to walk again. And when I finally came back to work, to life, everyone looked at me like I was broken, like grief made me less competent, less reliable, less worthy of opportunities. Sloan, I'm so sorry. It took one person seeing past that grief to my capability to change everything. One person willing to take a chance on someone who looked like a liability on paper. She met his eyes. When I saw you, exhausted, grieving, being ground down by people who should have supported you, I saw myself 5 years ago. And I knew I couldn't walk past that. I had to be for you what someone was for me. Ethan didn't know what to say. The weight of that revelation, the depth of shared loss, created a connection he hadn't anticipated. I don't know how you survived that, he said finally. The same way you survived losing Mia. One day at a time. One small decision not to give up, made over and over until it became a habit. Sloan straightened, her professional mask sliding back into place. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand something. You're not a charity case. You're not here because I felt sorry for you. You're here because you're genuinely talented, and I need people like you. The help I gave you was an investment in someone I believed in. Don't waste it. I won't. Good. Now get out of my office. You've got work to do. Ethan stood but paused at the door. Thank you. For everything. For seeing me when I was invisible. You were never invisible, Ethan. You just needed someone to look. He left her office and returned to his own, sitting at his desk with a view of the city and a fullness in his chest that felt like gratitude and purpose, and something that might eventually become joy. His phone buzzed. A text from Lily, sent from Mrs. Chen's phone. Love you, Daddy. Can't wait for you to see my recital. He typed back, Love you too, Bug. You're going to be the best butterfly there. Another text, this one from Margaret Chen. Heard about the presentation. Congratulations, you're building something good here. And finally a text from Martin. Diane and I are proud of you. Mia would be too. Ethan set his phone down and looked out at the city, at the afternoon light painting buildings gold, at the life spreading out in front of him like an open road. He'd lost so much. His wife, his business, his sense of self. But he'd kept the one thing that mattered most, his daughter. And in keeping her, in fighting for her, in refusing to give up even when everything felt impossible, he'd found his way back to himself. Not the same self he'd been before. Someone different, someone harder and softer, all at once. Someone who knew what really mattered. The dance recital was Thursday evening at Lily's school. Ethan arrived early, claiming seats in the third row. The Hales showed up 10 minutes later, Diane carrying flowers and Martin looking uncomfortable in a suit. They sat together, the three of them, waiting for the show to start. When the lights dimmed and the children filed onto the stage in their costumes, Ethan spotted Lily immediately. Her butterfly wings, still lopsided, still covered in too much glitter, caught the stage lights and sparkled. She looked perfect. The music started. The children began their choreographed routine, some graceful, others enthusiastically offbeat. Lily beamed throughout, her movements careful and precise, her wings fluttering with each turn. Ethan's eyes burned. Beside him, Diane gripped Martin's hand. When the dance finished and the children took their bows, all three adults stood to applaud, and Lily's face lit up when she saw them together in the audience. After the show, Lily ran to them, still wearing her wings, glitter dusting her cheeks. "Did you see me? Did you see?" "You were beautiful," Diane said, tears streaming down her face. "The best butterfly on that stage," Martin added. "Absolutely perfect," Ethan agreed, lifting her up despite her protests that she was too big to be carried. She laughed and wrapped her arms around his neck, wings crinkling against his back. They took photos. Lily with her grandparents, Lily with her father, all of them together in one frame that Diane insisted on. Evidence of a family learning how to be whole again, how to hold space for grief and joy simultaneously. Walking to the parking lot afterward, Lily between Ethan and Diane, her small hands gripping both of theirs, Ethan felt something settle deep in his chest. They were going to be okay. All of them. Not perfect, not unmarked by loss, but okay in the ways that mattered. Together. Healing. Moving forward. One small moment at a time. The approval came through on a Wednesday morning in late May. Ethan was reviewing ductwork specifications when Robert knocked on his office door, holding a printed email like it was a winning lottery ticket. "Building management signed off. Full tower implementation. You're officially the lead consultant on a 14-month, $1.2 million HVAC modernization project." Ethan stared at the paper Robert thrust into his hands, reading the words 3 times before they made sense. Approved. Authorized. Effective immediately. His signature required on contractor agreements by end of week. "This is real?" he asked. "As real as it gets. Congratulations, Ethan. You just became one of the most sought-after HVAC consultants in the city." After Robert left, Ethan sat in his office chair and let himself feel it. Not just relief, though there was plenty of that, but pride. The bone-deep satisfaction of proving he could still do this work at the highest level, that losing everything hadn't erased the skills he'd spent 15 years developing. He called Lily's school, getting permission to pick her up early. When she climbed into the truck, she immediately knew something was different. "You look happy, Daddy, like really happy." "I am really happy. Remember that big project I was working on? The one for the whole building? The air conditioning thing? Yeah, they said yes, which means I'm going to be working on it for the next year, and it means we can afford to move to a better apartment like we talked about." Lily's eyes went wide. "Really? When?" "Soon. Want to help me look for places? Can we get one with a dishwasher? Mrs. Chen says dishwashers are amazing." Ethan laughed. "We can definitely get one with a dishwasher." They spent the afternoon looking at apartment listings online, Lily providing commentary on each option with the seriousness of a real estate expert. Too far from school. Too small. That one's ugly. This one's perfect, except it doesn't allow pets, and what if we want to get a cat someday? By evening, they'd narrowed it down to 3 possibilities, all in better neighborhoods with better schools nearby, all affordable now that Ethan's income had stabilized. He scheduled viewings for Saturday, feeling the surreal satisfaction of having options instead of just taking whatever he could afford. His phone rang. Sloane's number. "I heard," she said without preamble. "Robert just told me. Well done." "Thank you for everything. This doesn't happen without you." "This happens because you're talented and you did excellent work. I just opened a door. You walked through it." She paused. "I'm having a small gathering at my place Friday night. Some colleagues, a few friends. I'd like you to come. Bring Lily if you can't get a sitter." "I don't know if that's—" "It's not optional, Ethan. You're part of my team now, and my team shows up for each other. 7 o'clock. I'll text you the address." She hung up before he could argue. Ethan looked at Lily, who was watching him with curious eyes. "Who is that?" "My boss. She wants us to come to a party Friday." "A fancy party?" "Probably." Lily considered this. "Do I have to wear a dress?" "We'll figure something out." Friday evening found them standing outside Sloane's building, a converted warehouse in the arts district with floor-to-ceiling windows and the kind of industrial chic aesthetic that screamed expensive. Lily wore her nicest dress, the one they'd bought for Easter that still had the tags on it. Ethan had invested in a new shirt that actually fit properly. They took the elevator to the top floor.
The doors opened directly into Sloane's loft, where at least 30 people mingled with wine glasses and quiet conversation. Modern art hung on exposed brick walls. A jazz quartet played in one corner. Ethan immediately felt out of place. Lily gripped his hand tighter. "Everyone's so fancy," she whispered. "We're fancy too," Ethan whispered back. "You're the fanciest butterfly I know." That made her giggle, and the sound caught Sloane's attention across the room. She excused herself from a conversation and came over, dressed in something elegant and clearly expensive. "Ethan, and this must be Lily. I've heard so much about you." "Your daddy's boss," Lily said with the blunt honesty of 7-year-olds. "He says you're really smart and kind of scary." Sloane's eyebrows rose. Ethan wanted to disappear. "I said respected," he corrected quickly. "I said you were respected and kind of scary is accurate," Sloane finished, smiling at Lily. "I like people who tell the truth. Come on, there's someone I want you to meet." She led them through the crowd to where a woman sat on a couch, talking with 2 other guests. The woman looked up as they approached, and Ethan saw the family resemblance immediately. Same sharp eyes, same confident bearing. "This is my sister Rachel," Sloane said, "and these are her daughters, Sophie and Emma." Rachel stood, shaking Ethan's hand warmly. "So you're the HVAC genius Sloane won't stop talking about." "I don't know about genius. False modesty is boring," Sloane interrupted. "You're brilliant at what you do. Own it." The 2 girls, probably 9 and 11, looked at Lily with interest. Sophie, the younger one, had a sketchbook in her lap. "Do you like to draw?" she asked Lily. "I love drawing. I did a butterfly project at school." "I love butterflies. Want to see my sketchbook?" Just like that, Lily was absorbed into the children's conversation, settling onto the couch between Sophie and Emma like they'd known each other for years. Ethan watched her laugh at something Emma said, watched her lean over to point at Sophie's drawings, and felt something unclench in his chest. She was okay. More than okay. She was thriving. "She's resilient," Rachel said quietly, following his gaze. "Kids are, when they have stable foundations. Sloane told me what you've been through. I'm glad things are turning around." "Me too." Robert appeared with drinks, introducing Ethan to other consultants and contractors who worked with Voss Industries. The conversation flowed to projects and systems and the technical details Ethan used to love discussing. He found himself relaxing, contributing ideas, even laughing at an engineer's joke about faulty thermostats. At some point, Diane called his phone. Ethan stepped out onto the balcony to answer. "Sorry to bother you," she said. "I know you said you had plans tonight, but Martin and I were wondering if we could take Lily to the art museum tomorrow. They have a children's exhibit she might enjoy." "Let me ask her." Ethan went back inside, finding Lily still absorbed in conversation with Sophie and Emma. He knelt beside her. "Grandma and Grandpa want to take you to the art museum tomorrow. What do you think?" Lily's face lit up. Really? Can I? Of course. He returned to the phone. She'd love that. Wonderful. We'll pick her up at 10. Diane paused. Ethan, thank you for trusting us with her again. I know we don't deserve it. You're her grandparents. She needs you in her life. Still, thank you. After hanging up, Ethan found Sloane on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. She glanced over as he joined her. Everything okay? Yeah, the Hales want to take Lily to a museum tomorrow. That's progress. It is. Ethan leaned against the railing. I keep waiting for things to fall apart again. Like this is all temporary and any minute something's going to go wrong. That's trauma talking. Your brain learned that good things don't last, so it's protecting you by assuming disaster. Sloane sipped her wine. But sometimes good things do last. Sometimes you get to keep them. Is that what happened with you? With your company? Eventually. Took me 3 years to stop waiting for it all to collapse, to accept that I'd actually built something sustainable. She looked at him. You'll get there too. Give yourself time. They stood in comfortable silence, the sounds of the party drifting through the open door behind them. Inside, Lily's laughter rang out, bright and untroubled. She really is okay, you know, Sloane said. Your daughter, despite everything she's been through, despite the instability and loss, she's genuinely okay. That's because of you. I didn't do anything special, just showed up. Showing up is everything. It's the whole job. Sloane turned to face him fully. I'm going to tell you something my therapist told me after Emma died. You ready? Ethan nodded. You can't protect the people you love from every bad thing that might happen. You can't control outcomes. You can't prevent loss. You can't guarantee safety. The only thing you can do is be present. Be consistent. Be the steady thing they can count on when everything else is chaos. That's what you've done for Lily. That's what makes you an exceptional father. The words hit deeper than Ethan expected. He'd spent so long feeling inadequate, measuring himself against the Hales' resources and finding himself wanting. But maybe the measurement had been wrong all along. Thank you, he said quietly, for saying that, for believing it. I don't just believe it, I've seen the evidence. Your daughter is happy, healthy, and secure in your love. Everything else is just details. They returned to the party, Ethan found himself actually enjoying the conversations, the connections being made, the sense of belonging to something larger than his own struggle. When it was time to leave, Lily hugged Sophie and Emma goodbye, making them promise to exchange drawings at school. We don't go to the same school, Sophie pointed out. Then we'll have to arrange play dates, Rachel said, smiling at Ethan. If that's okay with you? That would be great. In the car on the way home, Lily chattered about the party, about Sophie's sketchbook, and Emma's stories about her soccer team, about how the fancy cheese was weird, but the cookies were amazing, about how Daddy's boss was actually really nice once you got past the scary part. Did you have fun? Ethan asked. The best fun. Can we go to more parties? We'll see. That means yes, right? That means maybe, which is better than no. Lily accepted this wisdom and returned to describing every detail of Sophie's butterfly drawings. Ethan listened, one hand on the wheel, the other occasionally reaching over to squeeze his daughter's shoulder. Just touching base. Making sure she was real. Saturday morning, the Hales arrived exactly at 10. Martin wore jeans instead of his usual pressed slacks, looking more relaxed than Ethan had seen him in years. Diane had brought homemade muffins. For breakfast, she said, handing Ethan the container. I remember you mentioned Lily loves blueberry. She does. Thank you. They sat in Ethan's small living room while Lily gathered her things, the couch still pulled out from the night before. Ethan felt a flash of embarrassment at the cramped space, but pushed it down. They were moving soon. This was temporary. How was the party? Martin asked. Good. Sloane's sister has 2 daughters around Lily's age. They really hit it off. That's wonderful. Every child needs friends. Diane paused, then added carefully, We've been talking, Martin and I, about how we can support you better. Actually support you, not try to take over. Okay, Ethan said cautiously. We'd like to set up a college fund for Lily, something we contribute to regularly that she can access when she's 18. Martin leaned forward. We're not trying to overstep.
We're not suggesting you can't provide for her. We just want to help with her future in a way that doesn't undermine your present. Ethan considered this. A college fund was practical, forward-thinking, and genuinely helpful without being intrusive. I think that would be good, he said finally. Thank you. And we'd like to establish regular visits, every other Saturday, if that works for you. Museum trips, park days, maybe the occasional weekend sleepover when Lily's comfortable with that. Diane's voice was tentative. We want to be consistent grandparents, people she can count on. She'd like that. I'd like that. Lily emerged from her bedroom, backpack ready. I'm all set. They left, promising to have her back by 4. Ethan watched from the window as they drove away, Lily waving from the back seat, and realized he wasn't worried. Wasn't anxious about them saying the wrong things or undermining him or turning Lily against him. He trusted them. Somehow, impossibly, they'd rebuilt that trust. The apartment viewings took up most of the afternoon. The first place was too dark. The second had thin walls that reminded Ethan too much of their current situation. But the third, a 2-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood with good schools and a park 2 blocks away, felt right. Lily walked through each room carefully, testing the carpet with her feet, opening closet doors, standing in front of the window that looked out over a tree-lined street. This one, she announced. This is the one. You sure? Positive. Look, there's a dishwasher. She opened the appliance reverently. And my room is bigger, and I can see the park from my window. It's perfect, Daddy. The leasing agent smiled. I can have the paperwork ready by Monday if you'd like to move forward. Ethan did the math in his head. First month, last month, security deposit. 6 months ago, those numbers would have been impossible. Now, with his new salary and the signing bonus Sloan had included in his contract, they were manageable. Let's do it, he said. They signed the initial paperwork, scheduled the move-in date for 2 weeks out, and left with keys that wouldn't work until then, but Lily insisted on carrying anyway. In the truck, she examined the keys like they were precious artifacts. We're really moving? We're really moving. To a place with a dishwasher and a park and a bigger room? All of that. Lily was quiet for a moment, then said softly, Do you think Mom would like it? The question caught Ethan off guard. They didn't talk about Mia as often anymore, the acute grief having settled into a duller, constant ache. But she was still there, woven into every decision they made. I think Mom would love it, Ethan said honestly. I think she'd love that you have space to grow and a park to play in, and a dad who's finally getting his act together. You always had your act together, Daddy. You just had a lot of hard stuff happening. Out of the mouths of 7-year-olds. Ethan reached over and ruffled her hair. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just weren't paying attention. The Hales brought Lily back at exactly 4 o'clock, full of stories about the art museum and the interactive exhibits and the ice cream they'd gotten afterward. Diane handed Ethan a folder. Information about the college fund we set up. It's in Lily's name, with you as the custodian. We'll contribute monthly, and we've included documentation of everything, so there's full transparency. Ethan flipped through the paperwork, all legitimate, all properly structured, all designed to benefit Lily without strings attached. This is incredibly generous, he said. It's what we should have done from the beginning, helped instead of judged. Martin shook his hand. We'll see you next Saturday? Maybe the zoo? Sounds good. After they left, Lily collapsed on the couch beside Ethan. Today was the best day. Museum and new apartment and ice cream. Can every day be like this? Probably not every day, but more days than before. How's that? Perfect. The next 2 weeks blurred with preparation. Ethan coordinated with contractors for the HVAC project, finalized designs, attended meetings with building management. He packed their apartment in the evenings, Lily helping to wrap dishes in newspaper and label boxes with serious concentration. Mrs. Chen watched the activity with mixed emotions. I'll miss you both terribly, she admitted, but I'm so happy you're moving up in the world. You'll have to visit, Ethan said. Lily won't allow anything else. Every week, Lily confirmed, you can meet our dishwasher. Moving day arrived with perfect weather and help from unexpected sources. Robert showed up with his truck,
Rachel appeared with her daughters, who helped Lily pack her stuffed animals. Even Sloane stopped by, dressed in jeans and a t-shirt Ethan had never imagined she owned, carrying coffee and donuts for everyone. "I don't actually help move," she clarified, "but I provide moral support and caffeine." By evening, everything was transferred to the new apartment. Boxes filled the living room, furniture sat in wrong places waiting to be arranged, but it was theirs, spacious and bright and full of possibility. After everyone left, Ethan and Lily sat on the floor of her new room, surrounded by unpacked boxes, eating pizza from paper plates. "I like it here," Lily said. "It feels like a good place." "It is a good place." "Do you think we'll stay for a long time?" Ethan looked around the room, bigger than her old one, with windows that let in actual sunlight and walls they could paint whatever color she wanted. "Yeah, Bug. I think we'll stay for a long time." That night, after Lily was asleep in her new room, Ethan stood in the living room unpacking books. He found the photo album from the old house, the one he'd managed to save before everything was sold. Pictures of Mia pregnant with Lily, of their wedding, of the life they'd built together. He sat on the couch and flipped through the pages, letting himself feel the loss without being destroyed by it. Mia smiled out from every photograph, frozen in moments of happiness that had been real even if they'd been temporary. "We made it," he whispered to her image. "It was rough for a while, but we made it. Lily's okay. I'm okay. We're going to be okay." The photos didn't answer. They never did. But sitting there in the new apartment, surrounded by boxes labeled with hope instead of desperation, Ethan felt something shift. Not closure exactly. He'd learned grief didn't work that way. But acceptance. The understanding that he could miss Mia desperately and still build a good life for their daughter. That honoring her memory meant moving forward, not staying frozen in loss. His phone buzzed. A text from Sloane. "Settling in?" He typed back, "Getting there. Thank you for helping today." Her response came immediately. "That's what friends do. See you Monday." Friends. When had that happened? When had the CEO who'd first appeared in the mechanical room become someone he could call a friend? Another text, this one from Margaret Chen. "Congratulations on the new place. You've earned every bit of this." And finally, a message from Martin. "Diane and I are proud of you, truly. See you Saturday for the zoo." Ethan set his phone down and looked around the apartment. Not perfect, not luxury, but comfortable and safe and theirs. Evidence that struggling didn't last forever, that hitting bottom meant there was nowhere to go but up, that showing up every single day eventually added up to something that looked like success. Monday morning, Ethan dropped Lily at her new school. Better funded, better programs, close enough to walk if the weather was nice. She marched into the building with her backpack and her butterfly-decorated lunchbox, waving at him from the doorway before disappearing inside. At Voss Industries, the HVAC project was officially launching. Ethan spent the morning in meetings with contractors, walking them through the designs, answering technical questions, coordinating timelines. This was the work he'd been born to do, the perfect intersection of problem-solving and creativity and practical application. At lunch, Sloane knocked on his office door. "Got a minute?" "Always." She came in, closing the door behind her. "I wanted to talk to you about something, a proposition." "Okay," Ethan said cautiously. "This HVAC project is going to establish you as the go-to consultant for building modernization in this city. You know that, right?" "I'm hoping so." "It's not hope, it's certainty. And when that happens, you're going to be flooded with offers. Other buildings, other companies, all wanting what you're doing here." Sloane leaned against his desk. "I want to make sure Voss Industries keeps you. I'm not going anywhere. Not now. But in a year, 2 years, when you could be running your own consulting firm again, setting your own rates, choosing your own projects." She paused. "I'm offering you a partnership. 20% stake in a new division of Voss Industries dedicated to building systems consulting. You'd be the technical lead. I'd handle business development and operations. We split profits 70-30 after overhead." Ethan stared at her. "You want to go into business with me?" "I want to invest in someone I believe in. Someone who's proven they can do exceptional work under impossible circumstances. Someone who understands that success isn't just about money, it's about building something that lasts." Sloane smiled. "Think about it. You don't have to answer now. I don't need to think about it. Yes. Ethan, I'm serious. Take a few days. Consider the implications. I'm serious too. Yes. Absolutely yes. Sloane's smile widened. Then welcome to Voss Systems Consulting. We'll get the paperwork drawn up this week. After she left, Ethan sat at his desk in stunned silence. A partnership. A stake in something growing. The chance to build a business again, but this time with support and resources and a partner who understood what really mattered. He called Margaret Chen, needing legal review of whatever contract Sloane drafted. Then he called the Hales, wanting to share the news with someone who'd known him in his previous life as a business owner. That's wonderful, Ethan, Diane said, her voice warm. Mia would be so proud. I hope so. We know so. You've taken every terrible thing that happened and turned it into something good. That takes strength most people don't have. That evening, Ethan picked up Lily from her after-school program. Another benefit of the new neighborhood, better childcare options. She climbed into the truck chattering about her new teacher and the girl who'd shared crayons with her at lunch. Guess what? Ethan said when she paused for breath. What? I'm starting a new business with my boss. We're going to be partners. Lily's eyes went wide. Like you used to have? With the air conditioning? Exactly like that. Except this time I have help, and we're going to build something really special. That's so cool, Daddy. Can I tell Grandma and Grandpa on Saturday? Absolutely. They stopped for groceries on the way home, Lily riding in the cart even though she was probably too big for it, helping pick out vegetables and debating the merits of different cereals. Normal things. Precious things. The mundane magic of everyday life. At home, while Lily did homework at the kitchen table, Ethan started dinner. The kitchen was bigger here, with actual counter space and appliances that worked properly. He could see the park from the window, could watch kids playing on swings in the evening light. Daddy? Lily's voice pulled him from his thoughts. I need help with my math. Ethan sat beside her, looking at the worksheet. Multiplication tables. He walked her through the problems, watching her face scrunch up in concentration, seeing Mia's expressions in their daughter's features. Got it, Lily announced, filling in the final answer. Can I go play until dinner? Sure, just stay in the apartment. She ran off to her room, and Ethan returned to cooking. His phone buzzed with work emails, contract details from Margaret, a message from Robert about tomorrow's contractor meeting, the ordinary demands of a life that was finally, impossibly working. Saturday at the zoo, the Hales met them at the entrance. Martin bought everyone tickets, refusing Ethan's offer to pay for his and Lily's share. They wandered through exhibits, Lily dragging them to see the butterflies first, then the elephants, then back to the butterflies because she hadn't looked long enough the first time. Diane walked beside Ethan while Martin and Lily examined the penguin exhibit. You look different, she observed. Lighter, somehow. I feel different, like I can finally breathe properly. I'm glad, and I'm sorry it took us so long to see what Lily needed, what you both needed. We all needed time to grieve, to figure out how to keep living after loss. Ethan watched Lily laugh at a penguin's antics. But we're doing it, all of us. We are. Diane slipped her arm through his, the gesture motherly and warm. Mia chose well when she married you. I didn't always see that, but I see it now. They continued through the zoo, taking breaks for ice cream and bathroom visits, and the exhausting energy of keeping up with a 7-year-old. When they finally left in the late afternoon, Lily was dragging with tiredness, her hand in Ethan's on one side and Diane's on the other. Best day ever, she pronounced. Can we do this every week? Not every week, Martin said, smiling, but often. We'll make it often. That night, after Lily was asleep, Ethan sat on the balcony of their new apartment with a beer and his phone. He scrolled through photos from the day. Lily, with elephants, the 3 adults laughing at some joke Martin had made, a selfie Diane had insisted on taking with everyone squeezed into frame. Evidence of a family rebuilding, of relationships healing, of life continuing despite loss. He opened a new message to Sloane. Thank you for everything. For seeing me when I was invisible, for giving me a chance when I didn't think I deserved one, for being the person who showed up. Her reply came quickly. Thank you for being worth showing up for. See you Monday, partner. Partner.
The word still felt surreal. 6 months ago, he'd been mopping floors and wondering if he'd lose his daughter. Now he was starting a consulting business, living in a good apartment, rebuilding family relationships, and watching Lily thrive in ways he'd been afraid to hope for. The following weeks fell into a comfortable rhythm. Work filled Ethan's days with challenges that excited rather than exhausted him. Evenings belonged to Lily, homework and dinner, and the 1,000 small rituals that made up their life together. Weekends alternated between family time with the Hales and quiet days at home, just the two of them. The HVAC project progressed smoothly.
Contractors praised Ethan's designs. Building management expressed interest in expanding the work to other properties they managed. Sloan drafted partnership agreements that were fair and generous, protecting Ethan's interests while building something sustainable. In July, 3 months after the move, Ethan and Lily hosted their first dinner party in the new apartment. The Hales came, along with Mrs. Chen, Sloan, Rachel, and her daughters. The apartment filled with conversation and laughter and the comfortable chaos of people who genuinely cared about each other. Ethan stood in the kitchen, watching Lily show Sophie and Emma her room, listening to Martin and Robert discuss golf, seeing Diane help Mrs. Chen with dessert plates. This was what family looked like, not bloodlines and legal obligations, but people choosing to show up for each other. "You did good," Sloan said quietly, appearing beside him. "This life you've built, it's good." "We did good. I couldn't have done this alone." "Sure you could have. It would have taken longer and been harder, but you would have figured it out. Some people are just built to keep going." She paused. "But I'm glad you didn't have to do it alone." "Me too." Lily's laughter rang out from her bedroom, followed by Sophie's and Emma's. The sound filled the apartment, bright and uncomplicated and full of the joy that children possessed when adults managed not to screw everything up. Later, after everyone had left and Lily was asleep, Ethan stood in her doorway watching her breathe in the darkness. She'd kicked off her covers, one arm flung over her stuffed elephant, her face peaceful in sleep. His daughter. Still his daughter, always his daughter. He pulled the covers back over her gently, kissed her forehead, and whispered the promise he'd made months ago in a family court hearing. "We're going to be more than okay, Bug. We're going to be exactly what we need to be." In the living room, Ethan's phone sat on the coffee table, displaying a final text from the day. From Martin. "Thank you for letting us be part of your lives again. It means everything." Ethan picked up the phone and typed a response. "Thank you for coming back, for trying, for being the grandparents Lily needs." He set the phone down and looked around the apartment. Not perfect, not finished, still full of unpacked boxes and furniture that didn't quite fit. But home. Their home. Evidence that falling apart didn't have to be permanent, that hitting bottom meant there was solid ground to push off from, that showing up every single day eventually accumulated into something that looked like triumph. Outside the window, the city lights sparkled against the darkness. Somewhere out there, other people were fighting their own battles, struggling through their own losses, wondering if they had enough strength to keep going. Ethan hoped they found their Sloans, their support networks, their reasons to keep showing up even when everything felt impossible. He hoped they learned what he'd learned, that being enough wasn't about money or status or living up to other people's expectations. It was about showing up, being present, loving fiercely, even when fear said it was safer not to. In her room, Lily sighed in her sleep, a soft sound of contentment. Ethan smiled and turned off the living room lights, heading to his own bedroom. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Contract negotiations, school projects, the ongoing work of building a life worth living. But tonight, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. He'd been invisible once, ground down by grief and poverty and the judgment of people who should have supported him. But visibility wasn't about being seen by everyone. It was about being seen by the people who mattered, being known, being valued for who you actually were instead of what you could provide. And Ethan Cross, father, consultant, partner, friend, was finally, impossibly, beautifully visible in all the ways that counted. He climbed into bed and closed his eyes, falling asleep to the quiet sounds of an apartment full of life and hope and the promise of better tomorrows. 3 months later, on a crisp October evening, Ethan stood in the parking lot of Meridian Tower watching the sun set over the city. The HVAC project was nearing completion, contractors finishing final installations on the upper floors. In 2 weeks, they'd do a full system test. In a month, the project would be officially finished. And Voss Systems Consulting already had 3 more buildings lined up, eager for the kind of modernization Ethan had achieved here. A black sedan pulled up beside his truck. The window rolled down, revealing Sloane in the driver's seat. "Thought I'd find you here," she said. "Just doing a final walkthrough, making sure everything's on schedule." "It is. It always is when you are managing it." She gestured to the passenger seat. "Get in. I want to show you something." Ethan climbed into the sedan, curiosity piqued. Sloane drove through downtown, eventually parking in front of a building Ethan didn't recognize. 6 stories of brick and glass, recently renovated, with a "for lease" sign in the window. "What are we looking at?" he asked. "Our future offices. If you're interested." Sloane turned to face him. "Voss Systems Consulting is growing faster than I projected. We need dedicated space, room to hire a team, somewhere that's ours instead of borrowing space from Voss Industries. You want to lease this entire building?" "Just the top 2 floors for now. Room to grow." She handed him a folder. "Projections are in there. With our current contracts and the ones in negotiation, we can afford it comfortably. But I wanted your input before moving forward. This is a partnership, after all." Ethan flipped through the documents, seeing numbers that 6 months ago would have seemed like fantasy. Revenue projections, hiring plans, 5-year growth strategies. "This is ambitious," he said. "This is realistic. We're building something significant, Ethan, something that lasts. I want to make sure you're on board with the pace." Ethan looked at the building, imagining offices filled with engineers and consultants, conference rooms where they'd design systems for projects across the city. Imagining his name on the door alongside Sloane's, imagining a future that wasn't just about survival, but about genuine success. "I'm on board," he said. "Let's do it." Sloane's smile was fierce with satisfaction. "Then, let's go tell our daughter we're moving the company." Our daughter. She'd started saying that, referring to Lily as theirs in a way that acknowledged the village raising this child. Rachel's daughters had become Lily's best friends. Sloane showed up to school events and dance recitals. The lines between professional relationship and chosen family had blurred into something neither of them had planned, but both valued. "She's at the Hales tonight," Ethan said. "Sleepover, but I'll tell her tomorrow." "Good. Because I want her input on office design. Every 7-year-old should get to choose the color of at least one conference room wall." They sat in the car, looking at the building that would house their future. Ethan thought about the journey from night janitor to business owner, about the people who'd shown up along the way, about the daughter who'd been his reason to keep going when nothing else made sense. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for all of this, for being the person who looked. Thank you for being worth looking at, for doing the work even when it was hard, for being exactly who Lily needed you to be." Sloane paused. "You know what the best part of this is?" "What?" "You're not invisible anymore, not to anyone who matters, and you never will be again." The word settled into Ethan's chest like warmth, like truth, like the beginning of a story that finally had a happy middle instead of just a painful beginning. "No," he agreed. "I'm not invisible anymore." They drove back to Meridian Tower, where Ethan's truck waited in the parking lot, where he'd once arrived exhausted and afraid, where he'd first met Sloane in a mechanical room during a power outage, where everything had started to change. He climbed out of the sedan, shook Sloane's hand through the window, and watched her drive away into the October darkness. Then he got into his truck and headed home to the apartment where Lily's drawings covered the refrigerator and her backpack sat by the door, and her laughter still echoed in the walls. Home. Not perfect, but theirs. Not everything they'd once had, but everything they needed. And in the morning, he'd tell Lily about the new offices, about the company growing, about the future unfolding in ways he'd been afraid to imagine. But tonight, he'd just appreciate the quiet, the safety, the ordinary miracle of making it through the darkness to somewhere that looked like light. Ethan Cross had learned what it meant to be invisible, had lived in that shadow where exhaustion and poverty and grief made him disappear to everyone except his daughter. But he'd also learned what it meant to be seen, to be valued, to have people show up not because they pitied him, but because they recognized something worth supporting. And somewhere between invisible and seen, he'd found himself again. Not the same person he'd been before loss, but someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who understood that worth wasn't about what you owned or where you lived or how much money you made. Worth was about showing up every single day, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. And as Ethan Cross pulled into his parking spot and looked up at the window where a light burned in their apartment, where his daughter would return tomorrow full of stories about her grandparents and ready to hear about office buildings and future plans, he knew with absolute certainty they were going to be okay, more than okay. They were going to be exactly what they needed to be. Together. Always together. The end.